Welcome. I am your host, Manpreet, aka MMA Lock of the Night, and your boy on Twitter at MMALOT. And joining me always is my Canadian brethren. We got my guy CJ Saftic, or Cody Saftic, I should say, and you guys can follow him at CJ Saftic on Twitter. We are here propping you up for UFC Vegas 25, headlined by a big light heavyweight title, not even a title fight. Let me get my words together. We are headlined by a light heavyweight fight between Jiri Prochazka and Dominick Reyes, and it should get us a better idea of what's going to be happening with the light heavyweight division, especially if Prochazka ends up on the winning end this weekend. Really looking forward to this fight. A couple fun fights sprinkled throughout it. Cody, on a level of 1 to 10, what is your level of excitement for this card this weekend?
Yeah, excited for the card. There's a lot of fights that I think are going to be really, fun to watch. They're going to be entertaining. They're going to be a lot of guys on the card that I enjoy. But I'll be completely honest with you. From a betting standpoint, from a prop standpoint, which is what we're going to be doing tonight, there's not a whole lot of spots that I like. And the few that I do like are like 2, 3 to 1. So there's not a whole lot of plus money unless we're going to be chasing a couple. Nailed Randy Brown last week, which was great at like plus 550, but just the other spots that I didn't get, it accumulates to a break-even week. I want to go out there, get the best spots I can. And again, they're a little chalky high price. So glad to be joined as always. And we've got some PFL heater picks going right now. So again, with PFL, right, you're getting these guys with 3 to 1 favorites or 4 to 1 favorites. If you feel comfortable with them, if you feel safe with them, then you can try to parlay some of this together. And this is the same thing here. Maybe I'm not one to parlay props together. That just seems like risky business. But again, we'll try to find the best single spots that we can and mix it up, try to make it a profitable weekend.
For sure. When I was putting together my best 3 bets or prop bets for this stream, I was having a little bit of trouble, and unfortunately, I had to pick a couple of chalk spots. But I thought that they were decently priced given the circumstances. So it is what it is. But we are here still to break down the best props for you for every single fight. Appreciate everybody stopping by. Make sure you guys drop that like. Make sure you guys drop that subscribe. And just a reminder, tomorrow we will be doing that 9 p.m. Eastern final weigh-in show. No Cody this time. I already had like 5 people hit me up, and they're like, "Where's Cody? Where's Cody?" I'm like, you guys get enough of him on Thursdays and Dogger Pass. Come on. I'm trying to showcase some other talent here. So I got some good friends coming on for the show tomorrow. MMA Knockout Bets on Twitter, as well as Lucrative MMA Betting. He's a great dude as well. And then Sparring with Reality, Luke is going to be on as well too. So once again, I'll remind you guys at the end of the show. So hopefully, guys, you can join us for that as well, 9 p.m. Eastern tomorrow. All right. Let's not waste too much more time. Let's get into the card here. First and foremost, we got Luke Sanders going up against Felipe Colares. We got minus 140 on Luke Sanders and plus 120 on Felipe Colares. And look at the line movement on this one, right? You got Luke Sanders opening up at minus 205. He's all the way down to minus 140. A lot of people are fading the Luke Sanders train, and I don't really blame him. I mean, he seems to be one of those guys that falls into the untrustworthy group of guys, right? He has all the skills in the world, has a great wrestling background. Obviously, he's very high-paced and puts on a lot of pressure on his opponents. But then he just makes these stupid mistakes every now and then, specifically in the Nate Maness fight, trading in the pocket a little bit too long with the guy who's much better than you in that realm. And they paid for it. Nate Maness ends up getting the club and sub in that fight. It seemed like a fight that Luke Sanders should have won, right? I thought he won the first round, and it looked like he was going on to win the second round just off of pace and staying in his opponent's face. The one thing about Felipe Colares, that guy's not going to go away too easily. Just ask Montel Jackson, who was throwing everything in the kitchen sink at that guy, and he just would not go down. But we still get Montel Jackson getting a dominant decision victory that night. But Colares seemed to show some solid spots in that fight. Not to mention, when he was a plus 300 underdog to Domingo Pilarte, the fight before that showed off some great things there, especially with his jiu-jitsu, being able to control Domingo Pilarte in some weird positions. So good job on Colares in that fight. But this one, I have a little bit of a head scratcher moment here, right? It seems skill for skill. You got to go with Luke Sanders, but then like when you throw the fight IQ into the equation, it gets a little bit iffy and it gets a little bit questionable. I ended up going on the Colares side here. But not with utmost confidence. I think this is going to be one of those, we need Luke Sanders to have a banana peel moment where he just slips and falls, and we see Colares jump on top of it and start using his jiu-jitsu, whether it's to control him or find the submission. But I just can't trust Luke Sanders with my money. I know a lot of people out there outside of myself are way more confident in Luke Sanders than I am, and I'm maybe giving him a little bit too much slack here for the performances that he's had up until this point, but I still do lean on the Colares side here. I think his striking is good enough to hang with Luke Sanders and then eventually get, either a takedown, which I think is going to be harder to do considering Sanders' wrestling background, or another club in some situations similar to the Nate Maness fight. I do lean Colares. I do lean Colares inside the distance as well. And last time I believe I looked at it was around plus 330. It is now at plus 270. So there is a little bit of money coming in on that. And yeah, that's kind of the line that I like for this. The prop specifically is the Colares inside the distance. How are you looking at it?
Yeah, I mean, you basically nailed it. We're talking about Luke Sanders. The only way he loses this fight if he slips on a banana peel. But then lucky for people looking to fade him, that's all he seemingly does is slip on banana peels. It's extremely frustrating. It's extremely hard to watch. I myself am a big Luke Sanders fan, but he looks like $1 million until he all of a sudden doesn't. All of his losses, you can make an excuse for him. The Jiri Alcantara fight, right? He's easily up. Probably a 10-8 first round for Luke Sanders. He's absolutely mauling him. He lands like 96 significant strikes through 2.5 minutes into the second round, and then he gets caught with that knee bar from left field. It was like, oh man, what a fluke submission. Then the Sukman-Tath fight, that is a fight that he stands in the pocket a little bit too long. Again, wins the first round, looks really good in the first round. In the second round, I mean, he's playing with his food, standing in front of Sukman-Tath when he should just be using his wrestling a little bit more, and sure enough, he ends up getting caught again. You look at the Randa Yaya fight, you're playing leg lock game with the leg lock master. The Nate Maness fight, and again, you mentioned it, he stands in the pocket a little bit too long. But as far as what he brings to the table, he's got every other skill other than the ability to take a punch. His wrestling is very good. I mean, good in the sense that he's able to muscle you down on opponents. He's wily, good striking, good left hand, power in both hands, really. The Renan Barão fight, you see, even though it's a ghosted version of Renan Barão, you see what he's able to do when he really mixes it together and puts it all together. How his losses come to a good level of competition, maybe outside of Andre Sukman-Tath, yeah, you could say. But even the Nate Maness fight, it's the same shit. The first round, he's killing Maness. He's got him hurt. And then he stands in the pocket a little bit too long. He gets caught, eventually gets submitted. That was the total package, because we've seen him just get submitted on a bonehead decision. We've seen him get knocked out in a bonehead decision. That one he gets knocked out and then gets submitted. But there's no denying that the skill is there. When I look at Felipe Colares, he's durable, certainly is durable. You talked about the Montel Jackson fight. He takes a whopping in that one and keeps continuing on. He's only 27 years old. He's pretty long, big for the division. The problem that I'm getting at is that he just doesn't bring any variables to the table. As far as his submission game goes, he's a Team Nogueira guy, but haven't really seen him really put it together. He's 0-3, or he's 1-2 in the UFC. All 3 fights have gone to decision. But the troubling part is the punch output. So in his first fight against Geraldo Freitas, he lands 21 significant strikes in 15 minutes. The second fight against Domingo Pilarte, 23 significant strikes over 15 minutes. And then that Montel Jackson fight, he landed 7 significant strikes over 15 minutes. So the output's not there. So when you look at his regional show career, when has he knocked out anybody? He shows 2 TKO victories on his record. One's a retirement mid-round. One's like in his second pro fight against, a non-existent fighter in Brazil, right? So the knockout's not really there. The punch output is not really there. He's giving up takedowns in all of these fights. He got taken down 6 times by Geraldo Freitas, 11 times by Montel Jackson. You see how Montel just absolutely controls him the entire time. So honestly, the way I see this fight going is Luke Sanders is going to go out there and control him everywhere he wants to. It's whether or not he gets caught. And when you talk about Nate Maness, former TKO champion, guy's got some power in his hands. When you talk about Andre Sukman-Tath, a accredited striker trading under Henry Hoof, he had some power in his hands. Jiri Alcantara, a guy that had fought who's the guys in the division. At least those are credible losses. Randa Yaya, fucking ADCC champion. Those are credible losses, right? This guy doesn't bring those same variables to the table. He doesn't have that same submission game, so I'm not worried about Luke getting caught in a leg lock. He doesn't bring the same KO power, striking ability, so I'm not worried about Luke getting caught. So again, you're going on Luke Sanders, who's just like an absolute notorious apple pie shitter. Very, very tough to stomach for sure. The way I would look at this one is if I was going to take Luke Sanders, I'm thinking Luke Sanders by decision, because again, if we want to talk about that Montel Jackson fight, Montel put a beating on him and did knock him down. But like, this kid can take a beating. So Luke's going to go out there, and if he tries to finish him early, not going to work well for Luke. This kid will take the beating. Luke will get tired. Luke will make a mistake. We don't want that. We want Luke to go in with a resemblance of a game plan. And I know you're screaming at your screen right now. When does Luke Sanders ever go in with anything resembling a game plan? I agree, but I'm finding it hard to pick against the guy who's just the much more skilled fighter in every aspect. So I got to go with Luke Sanders. And the play that I liked was the Luke Sanders by decision, which was plus 120.
Plus 230, actually.
Sorry, yeah. My bad.
Unless it's changed.
No, yeah. It's close to even on the money line. So the way Luke Sanders fights is he's like a kill or be killed guy. So that makes you scared, like, oh shit, he's either going to get a finish or he's going to be finished. Why are you chasing this decision prop? It's that Luke will put it on. I'm expecting Luke to put it on him and Colares to take it. So it'll be decision. 2, Luke Sanders has been fighting in the UFC at 135 pounds. His last fight with Nate Maness was at 140-pound catch weight. And this one, because he's coming in on short notice, is at 145. So his power is going to be less than it is at 135. His finishing ability will be less than it is. I'm just hoping, coming off a knockout loss in the manner that he did, getting a little bit older in his career, realizing writing's on the wall, realizing he could be released from the UFC if he doesn't get his shit together here soon. Come on, man. Just like play to your gifts and like take this guy down and grind him a little bit. When you're standing, beat him up. So the last stat I want to throw in there, because I'm not a guy that, always bases things exactly on stats, but this one's pretty crazy, right? So this is just by your average, right? It's your fight average. Is that Felipe Corrales averages 1.13 strike per minute. 1.13. And as I've already outlined, he's a very low output guy. But Luke Sanders, and he's had a lot of fights in the UFC, averages 6.21 strikes per. So really, again, numbers isn't everything, but you retape study all these fights, and it's apparent then, as it is apparent on the number. Luke Sanders throws 6-1 on the strike count. So if this thing stays standing, Luke Sanders is just going to beat him up. If he decides to take this thing to the ground, I think Sanders has a lot of success on the ground as well. It's, the guy is chinny and has screwed me many times. So how much do you want to invest on him, right?
Yeah, I think that's what a lot of people's like pause this year is Luke Sanders. Once he starts distancing himself from like the Nate Maness loss and all these other losses, I think people will be a little bit more trustworthy of him. Speaking of which, can we give a hats off and a round of applause to the quality, the picture, and the lighting of my guy CJ Saftic's setup right now? My guy Pat Mayo has hooked you the fuck up. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, it's been looking spotty. Hopefully, and still looking at it, yours is obviously a lot more illuminated. But I got to figure out how to like put the lights up, maybe, because they're coming from the ground as it is now.
Anyway, give you that menacing look. It's all good.
It's all a work in progress.
For sure. It's definitely the best it's been since we started the show together. That's something I'll definitely admit. All right, let's move on to the next fight that we got is a Punjabi, an Indo-Canadian. We got my guy KB Bhullar going up against Andreas Michailidis. Obviously, the money line seems chalky as hell on Michailidis, and I think it is far too wide. And I think the reason that is because we have a similar Jacob Malkoun effect here with KB Bhullar, which is the last thing that we've seen from this guy is he got starched. Not only starched, but starched by a jab. And a lot of people are going to be honing in on that, but they'll just completely throw away the fact that it's from a guy in Tom Breeze who's a very good striker, a very much better level of a fighter than KB Bhullar at that point in time. We're talking about a KB Bhullar that was 8-0 coming into the UFC, mainly fighting Canadian regional MMA journeymen, right? Let's be honest. We're familiar with a lot of these guys. A lot of them probably wouldn't stack up that well in the UFC. I'd say the best win that he had on the regional scene was against former UFC fighter Matt Dwyer, where he beat him over 5 rounds. But still not the biggest of wins, right? When you start coming into the UFC and your first fight is Tom motherfucking Breeze, say what you want about Tom Breeze, but the guy is very, very skilled, especially when he's in a realm and in a matchup that stylistically favors him. And that's exactly what happened that night he fought KB Bhullar. Andreas Michailidis, on the other hand, very unfortunate UFC debut with that weird stoppage at the end of the first round where it looked like he was falling outside of the cage. I think everybody and their mother would have been like, if he had known that was a door, he probably would not have sat back the way that he did. But it was obvious that he was rocked and he was hurt, and he was complaining about shots to the back of the head. Unfortunately, the ref did not deem them shots back to the head, and they had given the victory to Modestas Bukauskas that night. But taping Michailidis, I don't mind what I see from the guy. He throws a lot of spinning stuff. He throws with a lot of heat. Obviously, that combination that he was able to take out Marcel Fortuna with was very impressive over there in Titan FC. And he moved from Greece all the way to MMA Masters in Miami to start to hone his game and really start to get better training partners. And it's seeming to work out for him during that stretch that he had right before coming to the UFC. Now, I'll give him a pass on the Bukauskas fight, as I thought he did look pretty good there. He was dealing with a guy who was much bigger than him, a weight class higher as well, not to mention, that fight was at 205. This one's going to be at 185. I was impressed with his ability to close the distance and get off the shots that he was able to. Now, here against Bhullar, we can't completely write Bhullar off just because of that one performance against Tom Breeze. Let's cut him some slack. This might be a Jacob Malkoun moment where it's like, okay, Al Hassan was supposed to go in there and absolutely mollywop this guy, and he was not able to. Malkoun gets his game going, which is grappling, absolutely grapple fucks Al Hassan to death, and then eventually gets that decision victory. What does KB bring to the table, though? I'm not sure if you have more access to these United MMA tape compared to the rest of us, but it seems like he's a guy that likes to fight from range, likes to use his long Muay Thai style, seems to have a sneaky jiu-jitsu game with a couple anaconda chokes and north-south chokes on his record. But again, level of competition, probably not the greatest. So maybe it's easier to pull off those types of submissions against those guys like the Derek Boyles. And I'm trying to remember the other guy that he got that submission victory over. But I wouldn't be surprised if we see a better KB Bhullar this time around. With that said, I just think the hard-nosed, aggressive version of Andreas Michailidis will probably be able to break KB Bhullar here. I don't think it's going to come as quickly as the Tom Breeze finish did, but I think eventually he's going to be able to crack that armor of KB and then eventually find that chin and start to really put it on him. It doesn't seem to me that KB does the best when it comes to being pressured and somebody staying in his face, and I expect exactly that to happen here with Michailidis, who's going to be at a size and reach disadvantage, but I do think that he'll be able to go through that just as he showed us in the Prochazka fight, and I think he's going to be able to finish Bhullar probably. I'll give Bhullar a little bit more slack. I'll say probably in the second round we'll see Michailidis actually finish him, but I'm not planting my flag on the ground on either side here. But in terms of a prop, the over-under being at 1.5, I think the over 1.5 is not too bad. Minus 125 is not too bad. I think this one will get stretched, but I think we'll see Michailidis get the finish a little bit later in that second round. So even Michailidis by KO is plus 100. I was hoping we'd get a little bit better of a price tag, but that's what we're with. Do you see this as I do, or do you know more about KB than I do?
No, I agree with you. KB Bhullar is a bit of a thinking man. He's very smart, very spoken to him, educated fighter. But I think that's kind of to his detriment. So when you look at his pro career, I mean, he's 4-0, and then he takes a 5.5 year gap. Doesn't fight between 2013 to 2018, like right at the end of 2018. And when he was interviewed about that, he was like, "Oh man, like back in 2013, he's like, I watched one of my teammates at a local show go like
his brother. His brother.
Face destroyed, right? Like broken orbital, and he's just like no dice. And by the way, you're saying it's his brother. He's no relation to Arjan Bhullar, who also
no.
I get that all the time. People are like, "Well, he can wrestle." You're like, "What do you mean he can wrestle?" Like
Indians in MMA.
His fucking brother was an Olympian. Like, no. So he sees his brother get stretchered off, and he's just like, "Dude, this is not for me." And just all of a sudden takes 5.5 years off. Apparently he trained the whole time. Apparently he honed up his skills, but never really got that hard work in. Then when you see his list of opponents since he came back, Corey Atkinson 4-8, Derek Boyle was 13-12, but he's on like a 7-fight losing streak. Cody Cron 16-13 against very long, lengthy losing streak. Matt Dwyer, UFC veteran, Matt Dwyer fought in the UFC at 170 pounds, right? KB Bhullar 6'4" with a 78-inch reach. So again, be the UFC veteran and biggest name on his record, but just haven't really seen enough meat on the bone to really grab a great read of how good he's going to be. Now, I'll give him one thing. In the Dwyer fight, goes 5 rounds, cardio looked decent. He lands a really nice question mark kick, caught Matt Dwyer off balance, and put it on him a little bit. But looking at Dwyer's recent performances, he doesn't seem to be the same guy he was in years past. Did KB Bhullar, did he take advantage of that? I don't know. But then you see him make his UFC debut. Short notice, right? Always going to be tough. Tom Breeze, come on, right? Very tough. But to get dropped by a power jab, looked out of it, didn't really look willing to overly engage. That's when I start scratching my head. So again, no relation to RJ Bhullar. And what I mean by that is the wrestling's just not there. I don't think that wrestling is key to victory in the UFC. His striking, he just doesn't seem like he's a UFC level striker. As far as being able to say, well, he was undefeated and maybe he's got a really good chin. He's 6'4". He's got a 78-inch reach. Those are variables. The manner in which Breeze put him down is just extremely worrisome. So I would have to go Michailidis. I'm going to agree with you, though. I don't like this money line at all. I mean, we've seen this all the time, right? You come in the UFC, you lose your debut, you take 6 or 8 months off, you come back, and immediately everyone's like, that guy's no good. He fought the one time and he lost. And just a load of improvements. You get the monkey off your back. It's your sophomore effort. The pressure's off. You're feeling a lot better about you. You go out there and you deliver. And could KB deliver enough to beat Andreas Michailidis? Yeah, for sure. But again, I got to go with Michailidis, who's fought the better level of competition. He's a guy that fought for a Cage Warriors world title in the UFC against Prochazka. It's first of all, the round's close. Second of all, the cage, but it was
very unfortunate.
Yeah, but it's those 12-6 elbows in the back of the head that caused him to be discombobulated and fall off the cage anyways. So it's like a whole trifecta of things going bad for him. Well, I guess the first thing wasn't going bad for him. He was competitive early in that first round. And so I think that's all stuff that's worth noting is that, He's fighting at the better level. He's fought the better level of opposition. He is 32 years old, but I see he's been spending some time at King's MMA. I would just like to hope that if this stays as a striking battle, he would have the slight advantages. And then you look at his loss to Modestas Bukauskas. And then Bukauskas in hindsight, right? He probably got robbed by Mikhail Oleksiejczuk, right? And this Martin Hamlet, who he had beaten for the title in Cage Warriors, that guy just won the first fight in the PFL show and looks solid. But you see in these developing European talent guys, all of a sudden it's not. There used to be a time, right, where it's just like, oh, he's from Greece. Like Anthony Christodoulou is the only other Greek fighter. And I know Elias Theodorou reps it, but he is Canadian at the end of the day. But it's like, no, since then, like all these areas, because now they have some guy from Brazil who's gone there to teach jiu-jitsu, and some guy that wrestled on the world team ends up teaching classes, and somebody ends up as your kick, and it's just like everything's getting developed. And I feel like a Michailidis is on level with a KB Bhullar. You have a prospect from Greece, prospect versus Canada, but Michailidis has spent a lot of time moving all throughout. He went to the States for a while. He spent a lot of time working in the States, whereas KB Bhullar, he's the top training partner for Tanner Boser. Tanner Boser, heavyweight, and you know, very much just leg kick from the outside and dance around, right? So I got to go with Michailidis as well. Don't love the money line. I'm going to agree with your assessment that over 1.5. KB, hold on, baby. if you're going to go down after that, go down after that. But over 1.5. That's the one I'm looking at as well.
Yeah, I'm hoping, obviously we don't have many Indians in the MMA sphere. We have Saint Line, who's doing his thing over in ONE FC. We have Arjun Bhullar, who's obviously over there at ONE FC, about to fight for the heavyweight title. But come on, KB, give us a dub. Remember that one guy that lost to Song Yadong? Backrat.
Yeah.
He lost, and then he got popped by USADA, and then he got cut.
Yeah, and they're fought again. And straight out, I know it sounds mean, but like I was like, I gotta find footage on this guy, and like he had done this type of like Indian mud wrestling. That was like his base, and I was like, I can't bet this guy, man. They just get like mudded up and went out there and wrestled, and like I'm sure it was tough. But
I think you're talking about Kabaddi.
Yeah. And did you watch Rugrug last night? And on
yeah, he got fucking wrecked.
Right, okay, but Senegalese wrestling champions, come on, man, come on. They're huge, they're larger than life action figure type guys, but it's like that style is not going to work in MMA, like a Greco-Roman style, a folk style, that works a lot better, man. But whatever, people enjoy it, right? They enjoy seeing clash of styles, no matter what the style is.
Shout out to my guy Dylan Glenn here, reminding us that Bharat Kandar is technically still in the UFC. He's just in the USADA testing pool still. I don't want to see that guy in the UFC anymore. Let's be honest. All right, let's move on to the next fight. Let's keep this thing moving on. Next up, we got Sam Hughes against Loma Lookboonmee. You want to talk about chalk? Loma Lookboonmee has all of it. She's at minus 390 right now, plus 320 on Sam Hughes. I kind of understand the love for Loma here, but there is a little bit of cause for concern if Sam Hughes decides to get that wrestling going, because that is kind of the Achilles heel of Loma's game that we've seen. Obviously, Angela Hill was very successful in doing that, getting her to the ground and kind of grinding her out that way. And even Jinyu Fry at the beginning of that third round, she's like, I know I'm down 2 rounds. Let me just take this bitch down and see what I can do. And she did exactly that. Unfortunately, she just didn't do the greatest job in terms of holding her down. And then obviously Loma was able to get back to her feet and start getting his striking going. That's kind of where Loma was born, right? The Muay Thai game, the clinch game is very good for her. She just throws up vicious knees and just knows how to manipulate the upper half of your body so well to really make those knees super effective. And then obviously her kicking game from the outside is very effective too, right? Even though she's only 5-2 in the MMA world, we know she has hundreds of fights in the Muay Thai realm. And that's probably the difference here with Sam Hughes, who we know what the regional circuit is like, right? Especially with the amateur scene. You just fight a couple guys on the amateur scene, then you get on over to the pro scene. And those are really the only fights that you have. With Loma Lookboonmee, you're talking about a girl who's just having all these, unsanctioned fights over there in Thailand, and just having trying to get all this experience in the Muay Thai realm. But the fact of the matter is, she's only had 7 pro MMA fights, and the difference here is that they have to worry about takedowns compared to Muay Thai, where it's just, they'll trip you in the clinch or whatever it is, and they don't really get to follow up when you get taken down. With Loma Lookboonmee, she seems to be working on that part of her game. One thing you'll see that's very evident, especially with her IG and her social medias, is she's trying to work on her strength. She's naturally a 105er, but unfortunately for her, they don't have that division inside the UFC. So she's going to have to start making a claim for herself at 115 pounds, which is what she's doing right now, and putting on that bulk, putting on that strength, putting on that muscle so that she's able to work the takedown defense a little bit better against some of these girls who are going to be looking like, okay, there's no way I'm going to outstrike this girl. Let me try to take her down and see if I can beat her that way. Does Sam Hughes bring that to the table? Kind of, but not really, right? I think Sam Hughes is still green in my eyes. She is one of the better prospects in this division, in my opinion. But I think stylistically that this is a horrible matchup for her. I think she's going to struggle to get her down, and then the longer this stays on the feet, the more she's going to get brutalized on the feet. So I am going to be taking Loma here, and I think the best path to victory for her here is going to be that decision. Now, a lot of people would be like, oh, look what Tecia Torres did to Sam Hughes, and she was able to get out of there in the first round. Let's cut some slack for Sam Hughes, right? She took that fight on less than a week's notice. She came in during fight week. She cut all the weight. She made the weight. And then she went in there against somebody who has incredible amount of skill and experience in Tecia Torres, who's just been around the game for so long. She just absolutely whooped her on the feet. And that's probably one of the more aggressive versions of Tecia Torres we've ever seen. So not a really good concoction for Sam Hughes in her debut there. But here she gets a full training camp against Loma Lookboonmee, but I think it's still not going to be enough. I think we see Lookboonmee absolutely torture on the feet, handle her in the clinch, just give us the full MMA game. And one last thing I'll say about Loma, she isn't completely a fish out of the water on the ground, right? Like in the Invicta fights, you do see her at times going for takedowns and controlling women from on top. So she's really rounding out her MMA game, and I can't wait to see what she brings to the table this weekend. So in terms of a prop, like I said, Loma Lookboonmee via decision. That is at minus 135. Don't mind that line, especially considering the money line is at minus 390, minus 400. Do you see this any different than me? Do you give Sam Hughes more of a chance than I'm giving her?
No, I don't. And this is another spot where I talked about in the beginning of the show. It's like I just don't like the lines. Like the ones that I do like are just blown up at this point.
Yeah.
You would like this fight to go the distance, right? But it's minus 255, so it's just too much for it to go the distance. And with Sam Hughes, I'm going to cut her some slack as well, man. Who the hell makes a short notice debut against Tecia Torres? Like, my God, talk about a difficult task.
On short notice.
Yeah. But the one thing that remains is that you're coming in short notice regardless, fighting Tecia Torres, huge task regardless, is that Tecia Torres has 12 pro MMA wins and like 7 amateur MMA wins and has never knocked out an opponent, right? And in that first round, like everything she threw landed flush on Sam Hughes. She was aggressive. She dropped her. She hurt her. Sam Hughes survives, gets out of the round, and then the doctor has one look at her, and you can just tell from the body language she doesn't really want to be there, right?
Nope.
And it's very understandable. You're fighting short notice, UFC debut, Tecia Torres. It's like, my God, talk about a bad go at things, but it was the body language wasn't quite there. When I think about Loma Lookboonmee, it's like quite the opposite, right? You should never use Wikipedia to cap your fight, but this line that I noticed is great, right? Lookboonmee began training Muay Thai at 7 years old at her father, Boonmee Supasara's gym, right? She began competing against girls, but soon was facing boys due to lack of competition. She eventually gained several national titles, competed on the Thai national team, right? She's a gold medalist at the Vietnam Games. She's a gold medalist at the World Muay Thai Championship in Bangkok, Belarus, and Mexico. Got a bronze medal in Thailand, got a silver medal in Sweden. Bro, she has like 150 amateur fights, right? 150 Muay Thai fights. And she's still only like in her early 20s. She began fighting at 7 years. Right. She began fighting at 7 years old. My buddy Donnelly, he's over in Thailand, and they got this kid that's looking for a fight right now, right? He's born in 2006. Okay. He's effectively 2 years younger than my dog. And he's got 258 fights. It's like, it's intense, man. It's like, holy shit. But they fight all the time, don't get me wrong. But it's like fight. So again, when I see Sam Hughes get busted up by Tecia Torres, have a cut open up above the eye, look at the doctor and be like, I'm done. I think Lookboonmee does not have those same instincts. Like, it's a different world, just think about the bad spot she's been in her life. It's the same thing with Francis Ngannou against Stipe Miocic. Someone made a great point in the first fight. They're like, "Oh, I'm surprised Stipe wasn't able to put him away. He was so tired." It's like, it doesn't matter how tired he is and what kind of bad position is he on the ground. Think about how many worse spots he's been in his life. So you persevere, right? Loma Lookboonmee, you really got to take her out, put her in these bad spots. Now, typical Thai fighter, she's a little undersized. She should be fighting at 105 pounds. You mentioned it. And her wrestling and her takedown defense, not very good. Her grappling, getting better, but still not very good. Now, you put her at Tiger Muay Thai. She's got the Hickman brothers. George Hickman's a wrestling coach. Peter Yan's out of that camp. There's a lot of good strikers that go to Tiger Muay Thai and actually walk out of it with legitimate wrestling and grappling skills. Lookboonmee's got to do the same thing. Now, tough go. We talked about fighting Angela Hill at the tough go in your debut. Lookboonmee been there too. She fought Angela Hill. That's a tough go as well. You see the Jinyu Frey fight, she's getting better. This fight, I expect her to be better. Sam Hughes would have to go in there, flip the script, and shoot those takedowns. Problem with that is when you watch any of Sam Hughes' fights, she likes to keep them standing. The fight with Vanessa Demopoulos, she's boxing her up for 3 rounds. As soon as the fight hits the ground in the 4th, she gets hit with the inverted triangle choke. Again, Vanessa Demopoulos is really good on the ground, so no issues there. But her style is to keep standing. So I think Lookboonmee wins this fight standing. She wins the fight in the clinch. She batters her up with some short, dirty strikes like elbows, knees to the body, softens her up. But I want to bet fight goes the distance. I don't know that I can bet that because of Sam Hughes' heart. I want to bet Lookboonmee by decision again. And what if she puts her away late? I would, at this kind of money line, I would love to take a shot on the underdog, but it's like I agree with Lookboonmee. I just don't love that 4-1, and there's not a great prop on it. So if I had a gun to my head, had to pick a prop, I'm going with the same thing you're saying. Lookboonmee by decision seems like the best number I can get for a likely enough outcome. But it wouldn't be surprised me if it was a Lookboonmee TKO as well, and I lost that prop bet. So I'm not looking to heavily invest in this one personally.
Yeah, the intriguing part here is that we got Loma Lookboonmee by TKO at plus 410. Not too bad of a line, but take this thinking into consideration. Like if she takes 1 round to go out there and absolutely badger Hughes, maybe in the 2nd or 3rd round she can get out of there, and that's where we can start honing in on those round props. You got plus 775 on Loma Lookboonmee to win in round 2. You got plus 1475 for her to win in round 3. So maybe that could be the approach if you think she can go out there and actually dismantle Hughes. I think it would take at least a round for it to settle in, and then it might start being a little bit too much. Do you like that approach? Is that something you'd be privy to?
Yeah. I think that's actually a smart way of looking at it.
Yeah. So if you guys do think Loma could finish it, I highly doubt it comes in the 1st round. So you guys should go definitely out there and check out those 2nd and 3rd round props. All right, let's move on to the next fight here. We got Kai Kamaka III taking on TJ Brown. Both of these guys coming off of losses in terms of the odds here. We got minus 145 on Kamaka, plus 125 on TJ Brown. And this is one of the few dogs that I actually do like on the card. Now, when Kai Kamaka came into the UFC, and especially had that fight of the night performance against Tony Kelly, a lot of people are like, circle Kai Kamaka. This guy seems like he could be something in the UFC. Great striking technique. Seems to go out there with durability. Seems like he can go into a war and come out the winner. But I think that the one thing that we were blinded by in that Tony Kelly fight is kind of, his gas tank's a little bit iffy. You know what I mean? Once the fight gets a little bit further, when a fight truly isn't going his way, he starts to suck wind a bit. Luckily for him, Tony Kelly was also sucking wind a little bit in their fight, so we didn't really get to see how bad Kai Kamaka could look if his opponent had better cardio. But we did get a chance to see that against Jonathan Pearce, who was able to, survive that 1st round against Kamaka and then really start to put it on him in the 2nd round. Eventually takes him down and just ground and pounds him to shit. Like Kai Kamaka could not get up. Seems like he was really huffing and puffing. And that's very weird to think, considering the majority of Kamaka's victory have come by decision. That means he's made it to the round 3 as many times as he has and has never been put out. But I guess it's level of competition now, right? Now you're in the UFC. You're fighting guys that can actually take it to that next gear the later the fight goes. And that's exactly what Jonathan Pearce was able to do. And he springs the upside. I think he was a plus 230 underdog that night. So big ups to anybody that was able to take Jonathan Pearce that night. Now here he's going up against a grappler in TJ Brown who wants to get the fight to the ground. And it doesn't seem like the grappling or the takedown defense of Kamaka is that good. And that's where my question marks are for Kai Kamaka is, how does he win this fight? Is he going to go out there and outstrike TJ Brown for 3 rounds? I don't think so. I think TJ Brown has the better cardio here. Is he going to go there and knock out TJ Brown? I don't think that's going to happen either, because who has he knocked out recently, right? The guy has no power in his hands. Right. So I think that TJ Brown will be successful in taking this fight to the ground. And I know the joke on Twitter this whole week has been, I guess I'm going to the betting window to lose more money on TJ Brown once again. But I think he gets his hand raised this week. And I think this is a great matchup for him. I don't think he has to worry too much about the power coming back his way from Kamaka. And, as long as he doesn't get Marcelo teamed again, like he did against Jordan Griffin, I think he's good to go here. I think he could potentially, this is my favorite possible round 3 prop for this entire fight card. We got TJ Brown. I believe it was plus 1,500 for him to win in round 3. Yep, it's still plus 1,500, but I think he gets it done by submission, which is still plus 525, which I think is an absolutely crazy line considering TJ Brown's approach in this fight. So I like TJ Brown. I think he's going to outlast Kai Kamaka. Hopefully he stretches it all the way to the third round and chokes him out there. But there is a possibility that I can do something similar to what Jonathan Pearce was able to do and get him out there in the second round. Am I being too harsh on Kai Kamaka here? Do you have a higher ceiling for him than I do?
Nah, not overly. I mean, he came into the UFC and I wasn't 100% hyped on him to begin with, but he was young, right? 25 years old, and he seems to have good technical boxing skills. Strong guy, physical guy, but yeah, cardio's not there. And as far as his boxing skills go, he throws caution to the wind sometimes. Loads up, lands his best shot, the best shot he's got, and it's like doesn't even really affect him. He shows 0 TKO wins in his career. He's never knocked out an opponent professionally. But that Tony Kelly fight, Tony Kelly took the fight on short notice. Tony Kelly comes in and is not in great shape. For the first round, Kai Kamaka unloads on him. The second round, Kai's tired. Tony Kelly wins the second round. In the third round, Tony Kelly is on his way to picking up a victory in the UFC. Former MTV cage star from Louisiana, Tony Kelly, is about to win his UFC debut. Crazy. And then Kai Kamaka hits him in the balls, right? He gets him in the groin. Tony Kelly takes a few minutes. Kai takes a few minutes, catches his breath. Fight resumes, insta takedown. Holds Kelly down and wins. And honestly, he did not look good whatsoever in that fight. So not a great look for Kai Kamaka. You also got to realize that it was close and was a win, but he came in as a minus 225 favorite. So maybe that's why people felt a little bit left down when they're backing him. But then he comes in as a minus 305 favorite against Jonathan Pearce. Now, we talked about a couple fights earlier, right? With KB Bhullar, right? You lose your debut, and all of a sudden you're just completely written off. And that's the Jonathan Pearce story, right?
Yep.
Gets smoked out by Joe Lozon in Boston. Mythical creature Joe Lozon in Boston. He gets knocked out by old man Joe Lozon, and right away it's like, whoa, this guy sucks. It's like, this guy's got good gas tank, right? He's got good, like a good grind to him, decent enough wrestling, trains at the MMA lab, making a lot of improvements. JSP, not GSP. I don't mind this kid, right? And he was live in that Kai Kamaka fight because Kai took that fight on short notice. You know what I mean? It was roles reversed. Tony Kelly came in, and it wasn't like it was for replacing an opponent. It was just like it was a late put together fight. Kai gassed, and then Kai took that fight against Jonathan Pearce on short notice, and Kai also gassed. And once he gasses, I mean, he's got nothing to offer up on his back. He just gets put in a bad spot, and the ref mercilessly stops it. I mean, he's getting pounded on. In this spot, I think it's the same thing. I'm like, if he goes out there and gets tired, it's going to be a real big issue. And TJ Brown, yeah, at his best, he is just going to chain wrestle on you. He's going to get you to the ground. He's going to put a pace on you. My thing is that you mentioned you thought TJ Brown had the cardio advantage. That I can't fully agree with, just because TJ Brown's very much one of these burns himself out going for the kill and doesn't really leave much left in the tank. That Jordan Griffin fight, 7 takedowns in the first round, no top control, but a lot of takedowns, tires himself out, keeps putting himself in the same guillotine choke 4 or 5 times, and then eventually gets snagged up in it. I thought that was, UFC debut, jitters, I get it. Maybe it was an adrenaline dump. Okay, fine, we give him a pass. The Danny Chavez fight, again, it's really low ring IQ. He waited until his lead leg was absolutely chewed to bits before even attempting his first takedown.
Yeah,
he just stood in front. Yeah, he stood in front of Chavez and just allowed that leg to get chewed up, and then was like, shit, I needed to get to the ground. And could he have? I mean, maybe, but he waited way too long. That kind of became the problem. So now he's got questionable ring IQ. He's got decent skill, but again, he's got 8 pro losses. The blueprint on how to defeat him has been put out there. Cardio could be a bit of a problem. Kai Kamaka has a full camp this time around. Like, I can see those variables, but here's the narrative that I'm going with, and then the reason why I'm going to take TJ Brown in the spot. TJ Brown was training with Bryce Mitchell, right? They're both out of Arkansas. And when you watch him fight, he kind of reminds you like a poor man's version of Bryce Mitchell, but he's hyper aggressive. You know what I mean? He's giving up a great position to try to get some of these submissions. He's muscling these takedowns to the ground. And if you pop back up, he just jumps on you and tries to muscle you back down. It's really taxing on his body, right? I would, more than a comparison to Bryce Mitchell, is I would compare him to a Derek Minner, right? Whereas Derek Minner goes out there, tries to just wrestle you to the ground the first 5 minutes, put that submission on you, and it wasn't working for Minner. And what both guys have now done is both guys have gone to Glory MMA and Fitness with James Krause, and you saw what happened with Minner. All of a sudden in the Charles Rosa fight, it was like, I will go and get that takedown. And instead of getting out of guard, instead of giving up a position for a short choke, I'm just going to grind on this guy and beat him up. And he did get tired, but it was like new game plan carried him through the 3 rounds, and he ends up getting the decision. If TJ Brown goes out there with a proper game plan, tries to pace himself a little bit better, the takedowns should be there against Kai, but put a grind on this guy and tire him out, and then it should be in a grappling battle. I think TJ Brown prevails in said win. So I got TJ Brown. Now, he is a finisher, and with Kai Kamaka, the way he got taken out against Jonathan Pearce, where he just got so fatigued and got outclassed on the ground that he gave up the TKO, I could see Brown either slapping on a submission or getting a TKO. So maybe if you're going to go Brown, you want to chase a bigger price tag, you just take that Brown inside the distance. But the line is pretty appropriate as it is. So I know we're talking about props here. We're not really talking about like the straight money line. But in terms of a guy with some upside, I think he's definitely got some.
Yeah, Brown inside the distance plus 335, not too far off the plus 525 if you're looking to take Brown via submission. But yeah, I absolutely agree with you. Hopefully that round 3 prop comes through for your boy, and that's exactly what I'm going to be targeting for this week. All right, let's move on to the next fight here, and somebody we just spoke about. We got JSP, Jonathan Pearce, going up against Gabriel Benitez. We got -1. Where did it go? -190 on Gabriel Benitez, plus 165 on Jonathan Pearce. Seems to be a little bit of money coming in on Jonathan Pearce. Not to mention Gabriel Benitez opened up at -250. So there is some love coming in on Pearce. Now, the thing to note here is Gabriel Benitez going back down to 145 pounds. He spent 2 fights up at 155, where he split those fights. One of them, I believe, was a loss to Omar Morales. And then after that, he goes out there and finishes Justin James. Now he's going back down to 145 pounds. And, it's funny because we had this similar situation with Tracy Cortez, where she normally fought at 125 pounds, went up to 135 for 2 fights, and then came back down to 125. And you had said it the day before the weigh-ins. You're like, let's see how she looks on the scales. I'm like, what are you talking about? She's been at 125. Of course she's going to make weight. And what happens? She misses weight by 0.5 fucking pounds. So that's why I'm going to be waiting out on Gabriel Benitez this week and see how he looks on the scales first before we truly go out there and say, okay, he should go out there and, get his game plan going. Now, Cortez did end up getting the victory, luckily enough for her, but it might be a closer fight here with Jonathan Pearce and Gabriel Benitez, considering I believe that their skill level is much closer than we had with Cortez and Keisha a couple weeks ago. Now, Gabriel, great southpaw, has a great left kick for up the middle, is able to really torch the body of his opponents, and it's really helped him out in a lot of his wins. But it seems earlier in his career, it seems like the wrestlers were the ones that were really giving it up and really giving him some troubles. You had Enrique Barzola giving him, I think, 6 or 7 takedowns, and even Clay Collard. Yeah, Clay Collard 6 or 7 takedowns as well. So it was just like, how well has he really acclimated with his grappling and his wrestling? We know he's an AKA guy. You guys have seen the pictures of them floating around with him training with Umar Nurmagomedov and the rest of those Dagestani guys from the AKA side of things. But how does that translate into the UFC? Now, I still ultimately am going to end up going with Gabriel Benitez here, not with the most level of confidence, as I do think he has a sharper striking. Jonathan Pearce is very hittable, and that is a little bit too much of a concern for me. But I do think that Pearce has shaken off that rust that he had in that first fight against Joe Lozon, right? Like you talked about it, going into your first fight against the UFC legend in his backyard. And not to mention it, I paid particularly close attention to this. The walkout song that Jonathan Pearce chose that night was a Post Malone song. And one of the first things that Post Malone says in the song, he goes, I've been waiting such a long time. And you can see that he was just so happy to finally make it to the UFC. He was just taking it in, whether it was boos, whether it was cheers. He didn't really give a fuck. He's like, I fucking made it. And then he has to go in there and fight a savage like Joe Lozon, who, albeit is closer, probably 40 years old at that point in time, still had the drive to go out there and perform in front of his hometown fans. And that's exactly why I believe he was able to get the victory that night, not to mention that beautiful combination he landed on the feet to eventually plop Pearce on his ass. But I think the longer this stays in the striking realm, I think Pearce will start to get touched up by Benitez. My concern is if Pearce starts to mix in that wrestling and start to take Benitez down, and if Benitez truly will struggle down there. I'll give Benitez the benefit of the doubt in terms of thinking that he should have worked on that. He should obviously know that will be Pearce's approach here. But at -190, I'm not laying that type of line. So the way that I see this going is I do think this fight gets stretched out. I do think that this is one that a lot of people are buying into the quick finishes in the last fights, thinking that these guys aren't decision fighters. I know that they have durability. I know that they can go long, and I think they can take this to a decision. So I do like the fight starts round 3 at -105. I think that's a great line, as a lot of people are thinking that both of these guys have issues with the durability. And then ultimately I'll be going with Benitez to win by decision at plus 305. I'm seeing a lot of people saying that Benitez is KO or bust in this situation. I don't think so. We've seen him have competitive striking matchups in the past, and I think that this could play out the same way. But if I were to actually put serious money on this fight, I'd go with your approach, which is taking the overs and taking the fight starts round 2 minus 225. I don't think that's bad either. But even fight starts round 3 to get it at even money, I think is a bit of a gift here. And I think people are kind of being blinded by the past couple fights of both guys here. So that's where I am going to go on the Benitez side. How are you seeing this one?
Yeah, again, this is another hard fight to gauge, right? With Gabriel Benitez, we know what we're getting out of him is he's a solid gatekeeper kind of guy. Fringe top 15, but you go out there and you beat Gabriel Benitez, you've got some serious upside. You're a decent prospect in the division. You can definitely hold your own. If you lose to him, chances are you're not going to have a contract with the company for very long. The wins over Justin James, Humberto Bandenite. Actually, if you start from the bottom, Humberto Morrison or Humberto Brown, he's cut. Clay Collard, even though he's my boy, he is cut. Sam Cecilia fights in Bellator, he's cut. Jason Knight's cut. Humberto Bandenite's cut. Justin James has got a fight coming up, but he's 0-3 in the UFC, and if he loses that one, surely. Yeah, sure. I mean, I know who you and I are betting on. Things not looking good. So again, the level of guys that he's beating, very low. But when you look at the losses, Omar Morales, Sodiq Youssef, Enrique Barzola, Andre Fili, it's like, yeah, all guys that are more than capable of holding their own and kind of fighting that top 15, top 10 kind of range at best. So again, he is a gatekeeper. He holds down a job in the UFC. If you're not ready for this level, he's going to take advantage. If you are legit, chances are you'll be able to come out positive on the other side. With Jonathan Pearce, though, it's like, well, how good is he? Coming to the UFC, his regional show career looked okay. You saw him on Contender Series, and we talked about it earlier. He's a wrestling grinding type guy. He can get those takedowns. When he gets these takedowns, he puts a pace on you. He does have good cardio. You saw that in Contender Series. The Lozon fight, obviously, he wasn't able to showcase it. And then against Kai Kamaka, I mean, he eventually takes him down. I think he gets 4 or 5 takedowns in that fight and then just puts a pace on him, breaks him down, gets a TKO. Being trained out at the MMA lab with John Crouch and just so many good training partners in that gym, no doubt he's going to be making improvements. The question is, can he get this fight to the ground? If it stays standing, it's Gabriel Benitez. Javier Mendez has gone on record multiple times to say, this is the hardest kicker I've ever worked with. Guys that stay at range with him generally get kicked up. I know he did bust up his own shit against Omar Morales, which caused him to get tentative on it. But you saw in the Justin James fight where, if your striking's not up to snuff, he is going to capitalize and take advantage. I think him in a striking battle versus Jonathan Pearce, it's Gabriel Benitez all day. It's whether this fight is going to hit the ground. It's whether Pearce is able to force it to the ground. Now, the thing with Benitez is he shows a 71% takedown defense, but it's skewed. He has 9 takedowns against Barzola and 6 takedowns against Clay Collard. By the way, this is 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Those 2 fights, they ruin the statistic, right? In all of his other fights, not that anybody's really trying to wrestle him, but this is a guy that's been in camp with Khabib Nurmagomedov for 6 years. Islam Makhachev, Duran Wynn, Daniel Cormier, Luke Rockhold, Josh Thompson. The guys know how to wrestle, right? And Sean Bunch, all these guys are in the gym all the time. They're working hard. I think Benitez's wrestling is good enough that he's be able to stuff the few shots when he's striking exchanges. Now, the last time he was taken down was 2017, 4 years ago, and it's the Jason Knight fight. If you rewatch that one, dude, he kicks the shit out of Jason Knight pillar to post. Jason Knight actually bites him in the first round, loses a point. But it's all Benitez. He stuffs the takedowns and he busts him up. Now, Jason Knight's a bit of a wild striker, bare knuckle boxing guy, and he's an antsy, young, hard go-getter, get in your face. But without the takedowns, he was rendered pretty neutral. And I think Jonathan Pearce runs the same risk. If he doesn't get this fight to the ground, he's going to get pieced up. But I wouldn't completely write off his chances of getting the takedown. It's that Benitez has had, 8 or 9 fights in the UFC. He's fought some decent guys. His wins are low level, like we talked about. The losses are to a decent level. At least you know what you're getting. Whereas Pearce could have a higher upside. Pearce could be heading in the right direction. But a win over Kai Kamaka, whom we're not picking in this spot either, and barely squeaked a win in his UFC debut, that's not super high quality. A loss to Lozon in Boston, a 30-fight UFC veteran, what the hell? But that version of Lozon, it does give you a lot more question marks. So I'm going to leave this one for right now. It's a pass. I'm going to wait to the weigh-ins, like you mentioned. If Benitez comes on the scales, makes 45 or 46, gets a 1 pound allowance, looks shredded up, looks good, looks like he's got energy, he's going to be too big. He is going to stuff those takedowns, and he's going to box up Jonathan Pearce. I don't necessarily like that over, though, is that I think he could catch Pearce. But in the same regard, this is a coin flip fight. It's close. If you want to label it a dog or pass and you take that shot on Pearce, I'm looking to either just pass wait to see weigh-ins and see if I can not get a last-minute read on it.
All right. I don't blame you for that one. This is definitely one that you guys are going to want to tune into the Ultimate Weigh-In Show to see what Gabriel Benitez looks like and what we're able to take away from it. All right, let's move on to the prelim headliner here. We got Randa Markos going up against UFC newcomer Luana Pinheiro. She is the girlfriend of one Matthias Nicolau, who fought or just made his return to the UFC a couple months ago. Interesting fight, right? We got Pinheiro coming in, making her debut. Similar situation to Gloria De Paula a couple months ago, and we saw what happened with her in terms of what Jin Yu Fry was able to bring to the table. You put her up against a veteran of the sport, and they fall flat on their face. So it's a similar situation here where you got a middling Randa Markos, literally a 500 fighter Randa Markos. If she loses this fight, she'll be 10-11, which is obviously not a great look. But she's been in the cage with the who's who, right? Like just think about the level of competition she's faced since she's been in the UFC. I remember her back. I worked at Rec 2.0 in Ottawa when she fought Ashley Nichols. And since then, she's just obviously she had that one loss to she beat Kara Kirsch right after that. Lost to Justine Kish, had one more fight for PFC, and then got onto the Ultimate Fighter. But just look at these names: Tisha Torres, Felice Herrig, Rose Namajunas, Jessica Penne, Carolina Kovalkovich, Courtney Casey, Carla Esparza, Alexa Grasso, Juliana Lima, Nina Nunes, Marina Rodriguez, Angela Hill, Claudia Gadelia, Ashley Yoder, Amanda Hebus, Mackenzie Dern, Kanaka Murata. Is that not like pretty much everybody in the lower weight classes for the women's? Like she's fought everybody, but unfortunately for her, she's on a 3-fight losing streak right now. But not the worst names, right? Amanda Hebus, obviously we know she's very highly touted. Mackenzie Dern, probably the worst fight IQ we've ever seen from Randa Markos, saying the whole week, I'm not going to engage in the grappling. And that's literally the first thing she does once Mackenzie Dern flops to her back. And then we get the Kanaka Murata fight, who, obviously it was her UFC debut, but she has a very solid wrestling background, and she was able to show it off in that fight. Now here with Pinheiro, you're having a fighter that's on a 6-fight winning streak, all first-round knockouts, and that gives me some questions about what this girl's cardio looks like. She's gone to a decision twice in her career, one in her first ever fight, who I believe that girl that she ended up fighting that night and beating ended up going 0-4 and just quit MMA all in all. And then the girl she ended up losing to via decision ended up going 4-4 in her career and just ended up not doing MMA anymore either. So we know the regional Brazilian scene is very sketchy, so she can go out there and absolutely toast these girls and then come to the UFC with a great record. But we got to give her some credit for that Frausta knockout that she had on the Contender Series. Frausta was very experienced by that point in time, had 14 fights, was 8-6 at the time. Sister of Zoila Frausta as well, if I'm not mistaken. Yep. But still, the level of competition, not what she's going to be fighting in the UFC. Let's be honest. Randa Markos is notoriously durable. She's only been finished twice, I believe, in the UFC from Courtney Casey via armbar over 5 years ago or 6 years ago. And then obviously the most recent one with Mackenzie Dern via armbar as well. But she does a really good job of staying out of bad positions other than that Mackenzie Dern fight. She was able to survive, I believe, 7 minutes on the ground with Amanda Hebus, who's a pretty solid jiu-jitsu player in herself. So she does have those things that she's working on. Speaking of things that she's working on, she's moved to training camp down to Travis Luter's gym, the Michael Jordan of Brazilian jiu-jitsu. She's gone down there and, really starting to work on her game and really trying to shore up those jiu-jitsu deficiencies that she has in her game. Because you even remember from the regional scene, what was her game plan? It was take opponents down, smother them, look for a submission, look for ground and pound. But then once she started taking those levels up in competition, it wasn't working out as much for her. And that's exactly the realization it seems like she's come to. Now, I don't know if it's because of the COVID lockdown and restrictions that we're having up here in Ontario or even in Michigan. I'm not sure what it's like over there, but she went over to Texas. She's training with Travis Luter's gym now. It's got to mean something in terms of she knows that this is her last chance. This is probably her pink slip fight. If she loses this one, she's probably out of the UFC. But she has a fighter in Luana Pinheiro who I have a lot of question marks about still, right? She looks great on the surface. She seems like a girl that the UFC could truly market. She has the finishing ability as she's shown in her last 6 fights. But what happens when this fight goes into rounds 2 and 3? What's going to happen? Like, does Randa Markos' durability come through for her? Does she win with her herky-jerky style of her striking? It's not the most technically correct, but it does the job. She's able to clinch up with her opponents, push them up against the cage, make it a dirty, grinding fight. And Pinheiro's a brown belt, but I believe that Randa Markos should be safe on the ground here. Is she going to decide to take this to the ground and try to, play with her there? Maybe not the best thing to do in the first round when Pinheiro is fresh and ready to go, but let the fight lay on her a little bit more and then start to take her into deeper waters and try to grind her out. That's the type of fighter that I think that Randa Markos is. And I think you can't overlook the amount of experience and stuff that she's been through in the UFC and not think she's going to be able to bring that here in this fight against Pinheiro. So you're not going to catch me with my money on the UFC newcomer Pinheiro in this fight. She may look great. She may go on to do great things in this UFC division. But given everything that we know up until this point, I'm not the biggest on the Pinheiro train. So I am going to go with Markos, not with the utmost confidence and not just because she's Canadian, as some people might end up throwing at me. But I think she has a decent shot to pull off the upset here. We're looking at the plus 140 for Markos, but in terms of her win condition, it's obviously going to be a decision, right? She's not really a finisher. I think the last time she finished somebody was absolutely hell via armbar. But Randa Markos,
pretty dope, right? It's a nice win.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then Markos by decision plus 235. I don't think that's a bad line. How are you seeing this one?
Yeah, I'm going to agree. I don't think Markos by decision line is terrible. The fight to go the distance is minus 185, which is not
one last thing, Cody.
Yeah.
I did fail to mention. You just said that, yeah, the over 2.5 minus 220. I think that's very poorly priced because of Pinheiro's regional scene record. And yeah, I absolutely agree. Fight goes to decision, and over 2.5 at minus 220, I think is a steal of a line. Continue. Sorry.
Yeah, and with Pinheiro, it's like, you know what? I honestly, and these are lessons I learn all the time, so I can't really say lesson learned, but just from last week, right? Last week there was Zhu Rong versus Kazulo Vargas. And on one hand, you have Zhu Rong, who it's all regional show career tape. It's all very low level. He's beaten a low level of opposition. He's not ready for the bright lights. And Kazulo Vargas has no real intangibles, you know? He just was the older, more seasoned, tougher guy and went out there and gave him a humbling experience. Luana Pinheiro, she looks like she's got some legitimate skills. It's not very often that you see 115-pound fighters scoring first-round knockouts. And her, I mean, she seems to have some legitimate power in her hands. Trains at American Top Team, as you mentioned, her boyfriend there as well. No doubt that she's making large improvements, but it's troubling that she wins a decision in her pro debut, and then every other win that she's had has been first-round finishes, whether they're 5 TKOs, 2 submissions. They're all happening in the first round. The one time that she got extended outside of that is when she loses a split decision. And that fight's only realistically 3 or 4 years ago. Randa Markos was losing to Rose Namajunas on The Ultimate Fighter back in 2014. And she's fought a who's who. She's fought all the best girls, like you mentioned. But she's just got that seasoned experience. Has she made some bad decisions in the past? Yeah, absolutely. Does she seem like a lost fighter looking for something? Most definitely. You mentioned, because, yeah, we've had the privilege of watching Randa Markos for a long time. But back when I knew her, she trained at Maximum in Windsor.
Reno.
Right? Yeah, she was a Reno Belcastro trained fighter, TJ Laramie's camp, Kyle Prepelic, the whole cast of characters down there. And she just up and bails and goes to Michigan Top Team, right? Is like, sorry, you know, I got to train a better level. And it all happened before the Justine Kish fight in RFA, whereas a new manager was like, oh, I can get you this fight in RFA, but you should leave Reno, you should leave Windsor and come to Michigan. So she does. And then she fought a couple times at a Michigan Top Team, left, and went to TriStar. Fought for a couple fights at a TriStar, left, went back to Michigan Top Team. Now she's left Michigan Top Team and she's out in Texas. Like, I'm sure it probably is because of restrictions. Don't get me wrong. You need to get grappling in. You need to get hard training in. And maybe the camps in Michigan are not open and they don't have the same amount of bodies. Like Texas and Florida is certainly where you want to be. But with Randa Markos, like, it's just kind of been, you know, one spot to another. I don't know that she's got one steady coach that's been with her trying to give her advice. It's more so just like she's leading her own charge. And it worked for a long time. She's never won back-to-back fights in the UFC. She's never lost back-to-back fights in the UFC. And then all of a sudden she did. And mind you, it's always good level of competition, but she finally broke that streak when she lost to Ribas, Dern, and Murata consecutively. Now, Kanaka Murata is a wrestling beast. I mean, I really like this girl. I like her for sure.
So
Mackenzie Dern, asked for days. But beyond that, is really improving and has the best jiu-jitsu in the division. Amanda Ribas, people will say she's a bust. Still young, still improving. Very solid fighter in the division. Claudia Gadelia, former title challenger. Amanda Nunes, you know, basically could have been title challenger, but a top 3, top 5 girl in the division. Marina Rodriguez is still a fucking beast. She fought her to a draw. Alexa Grasso, Courtney Casey, Karolina Kovacevic, Jessica Penne. All those girls have headlined UFC cards. She doesn't lose to average run-of-the-mill fighters. Very much she's kind of like, we talked about, you know, a gatekeeper, a Gabriel Benitez. Like, she's there to guard the gate. Murata's badass. Dern's badass. Rivas is badass. They all pass the test. Pinheiro badass? I don't know. I'll find out on Saturday if she could beat Randa Markos. But again, bringing it back to the example of Zhu Rong versus Vargas, I knew Vargas was just he was tough. You know, he went 3 rounds against Andrade. He got disqualified in his last fight, so it wasn't like it was he got KO'd or submitted. He had actually never been finished, or he had been finished by Caceres, the only guy to beat Usman. So you went past there. It's like that durability, that 2 fights in the UFC, that experience, that 30 versus 21 years old, that all matters, man. And I think Randa Markos has that here. She's made the walk 20 plus times. She's fought. This is probably the weakest opponent she's fought on paper since Ashley Yoder, I guess, who she beat. Juliana Lima, who she beat. Jocelyn Jones-Lybarger, who she beat. You know, maybe Courtney Casey. This is like the lowest level, and that fight's 5 years ago, right? Markos has got to know, I'm done here. I got a 10-10 record. I'm on a 3-fight losing streak. As nice as it is the UFC to shake my hand and give me one last fight, it's do or die, baby. It's time to do it. And I think that she's got one left in her. So I would say that it's dog or pass. That's the dog as you go with Markos. And Markos seems like a grinding type fighter. So Pinheiro's only pro loss. She lost by a split decision. You have to take her into deeper waters, tire her out, grind her. Markos is you got to bring a lunch pail with her and get down to business. But I think she's got the skills to do it.
I was actually expecting you to be on the other side here with Pinheiro, but you nailed all the points, man. Like Pinheiro could absolutely go out there and starch Markos, but given the data that we have and everything that we know, and similar fighters coming into similar situations and how it's played out in the past, it's hard to overlook Randa Markos here. Say what you want about her 3-fight losing streak, poor fight IQ in that Mackenzie Dern fight, but man, like she's a scrapper. She's durable, and she should be able to push Pinheiro here, and we should be able to see what Pinheiro is truly made of the farther this fight goes. All right. Let's move on to the main card here. That is the prelims. Now we're going to get into the main card. I do want to remind you guys, make sure you guys hit that like, hit that subscribe. We're here every 8 p.m. Thursday nights for you guys, propping you up. And obviously Friday nights, the Ultimate Weigh-In Show, 9 p.m. Eastern. A different cast of guys every single week, but really looking forward to breaking down the fights for you guys with the final thoughts and weigh-ins in mind. All right, let's get into the main card here. The first one fight, I still don't understand why the fuck this fight's on the main card, but let's get it over with. We got Poliana Botelho against Luana Carolina. I believe this was actually supposed to be Poliana Botelho versus somebody else, Mara Bueno Silva. Unfortunately, Silva pulls out and in steps Luana Dread Carolina. Now, Poliana Botelho probably has a better striking here, in terms of power and ability to put her opponents away. Carolina seems like that fighter, like when she's at her best, we get that Priscilla Cachoeira type performance where she's on the outside, pretty much just beating her up from distance, out-voluming her, putting in the pace on her. And then it was interesting to see her give up that knee bar loss to Ariane Lipski. And it was interesting that the line was as close as it was. A lot of people are giving up on Lipski, the violence queen coming over from KSW, and she loses a couple fights, and all of a sudden she's almost at a pick'em against a girl like Luana Carolina. Luckily, she was able to pull off her knee bar victory there, so she was able to get her hand raised. But this fight, I don't agree with the line, first and foremost, minus 260. I think that's a little bit way too much chalk on a fighter like Poliana Botelho, but she should still go out there and outstrike and outwork this girl in Luana Carolina. Questionable cardio on Botelho a little bit, but I do think her heavy-handed style is going to be the detriment to Luana Carolina actually getting her hand raised here. So I do like Botelho. I think she'll go out there and outstrike Carolina. Carolina might throw a couple more strikes than her. She might put more volume on her, but I think the bigger and more impactful shots are going to come from Botelho, and I think that's ultimately what the judges are going to see. So I like Botelho by decision, which is minus 120, but I wouldn't mind a little bit of a sprinkle on Botelho by TKO at plus 650, as she does have some heater in her hands. And Carolina, I don't think, definitely she's very, very hittable, which is not a good sign, especially when you're going up against a heavy hitter like Botelho here. So plus 650, I don't think it's a bad spot, but if you're putting a gun to my head, I think minus 120 on the decision line for Botelho is probably the best way to go. Do you think Carolina has a better shot of winning this? How do you see this one going?
Okay, so we're actually same, but different. So I got Poliana Botelho, right? I like the Poliana Botelho decision, but whereas you looked at that TKO, I looked at the submission. Now, mind you, Poliana Botelho doesn't really have submission. So that's why you're getting a plus 580 line on that Botelho by submission. But we talk about it often. It's not necessarily that just because they haven't done it or haven't done it in a while that they can't do it. It's all about how certain matchups come to be. With Luana Carolina, I mean, she's tall, she's lanky, she's rangy, and she has great output. We all know that about her. Contender Series fight, she actually puts a great pace on, uses that length 85 significant strikes landed over 15. The fight with Cachoeira, 111 strikes and a knockdown. It's a great performance. Lipski, we're remembering KSW. She's the former champion. The violence queen is a Muay Thai fighter. Okay, they line up. This is striker versus striker. This is as striker versus striker as it gets. Prior to the fight, and I'm not sure if you've seen it. I felt like I talked to you about it, but maybe not. But prior to the fight, Luana Carolina, the strength and conditioning coach, releases tape of her training, and it's like she's got no physical strength. She can't do a push-up. Like she's like
push-ups.
Yeah, the push-ups. She's like sitting there like crooked with like her back like going halfway down, and it was like, oh shit.
Yeah.
Now, as far as Muay Thai goes, as far as throwing lots of volume, she can do that. But the second Lipski clinched up with her, tossed her to the ground, she just fed her the knee like she had never gone to jiu-jitsu before and just walked into the most awkwardly set up knee bar that you'll see this year. Or I guess it happened last year. But still, very, very awkward setup to it. Now, Lipski isn't known for her ground game. It's the fact that Luana Carolina seemed out of it of sorts. And seeing her have that weakness, and I think like an aggressive, strong fighter will be able to go out there and have their way. So in one aspect, I agree with you. Poliana Botelho is the heavier striker. So even though Carolina should have the volume, Botelho lands the harder shots. Maybe that gets the job done. But you can't rely on these shitty judges week in and week out to give you a proper decision when they might just score a volume. So Poliana goes out there and scores the takedown. Now, as much as you're saying, shit, man, I mean, submission, takedown, she's actually 3 for 3 for takedowns in the UFC. She's only actually attempted 3 takedowns, but she got all 3 down. She took down Pearl Gonzalez, and she had 2 takedowns against Lauren Mueller. She likes to stay standing. Yeah, she likes to work that body kick like the Suri Kondo fight. Yeah, she is a Nova União trained aggressive striker, but their ability to score takedowns is there. Once she gets the fight to the ground and pound, soften her up, but Carolina might just give you the submission again. So the play would be Botelho. We're chasing props here. We're trying to get a better price. It's a prop-based show. I would say that the smart prop would be Botelho by decision. But if you're looking for like one of these 6-1 little punt type plays, I know you're going TKO. I thought submission was live because of the level of grappling that Luana Carolina's at, which is very low.
I don't blame you. I think inside the distance is a good line regardless. So it almost comes down to what, pick your poison for Botelho, which side she's going to be going with, whether she wants to ground and pound or snatch up a submission victory here. So yeah, I'm glad that we're able to find some value on this fight. Hopefully it comes to fruition for the people listening. But it's definitely the fight that I think most people are just like, let's just go to the washroom. Let's go to the backyard, whatever the fuck it is, right? All right, let's move on to
the backyard. We know what goes down in the backyard. Yeah, fuck yeah.
All right, let's get the next fight underway. We got Merab Dvalishvhili going up against Cody Stamann, and this is one of the more intriguing fights for me because I've been wanting to see Merab start taking these steps up in competition, right? This is where we truly get to see what he's been made of. But, you can't really knock the level of competition that he's had in the past, right? Like that Ricky Simón fight is starting to look a lot better now, even though he ended up losing that fight. He performed very, very well in that fight. He probably would have won that fight had it gone to a decision like it should have, in my opinion. But, you got Ricky Simón on your record. You got Brad Katona, who's no longer in the UFC. The Casey Kenny win, very solid win for him there. Even the John Dodson win. Say what you want about John Dodson in 2020, but my question mark was I even sprinkled a little bit on John Dodson via KO that night because I didn't really believe in Merab's striking ability, and I thought that if John Dodson was able to keep this fight vertical, he would be able to land a big enough bomb on him and put his lights up. But Merab has a hell of a fucking chin, and he has a hell of a fucking motor, and I think that's going to take him very, very far in this sport. Not to mention he averages close to 8 takedowns a fight, but that just lets you know, right? Like he lets these guys back up, or he just doesn't do the best job in terms of holding these guys down. He's just always working, and more often than not, that leaves an opening for these guys to get back to their feet. But it almost reminds me of Cain Velasquez during his run, right? He wasn't the greatest fighter, like in terms of like keeping a guy down, so he's always able to get these guys, back down as soon as they get back to their feet. But it almost seems like that's more exhausting than just holding a guy down, right? For the opponent that I'm talking about, these opponents just have to keep getting back up 3, 4, 5 times around, and it takes so much energy to just get back to your feet and then get this guy clamping back onto you just to get dragged back to the ground. And that's kind of why Merab Dvalishvhili has been so successful in his approach, because he just wears on guys so much. And I'm not sure if Cody Stamann is going to be able to, I don't know if his technical wrestling will be able to out-trump the Merab Dvalishvili way of fighting. And I always thought a more technical guy was going to give Merab Dvalishvili problems, but like Ricky Simón's a great wrestler, got ragdolled. Brad Katona, decent wrestler. I know Canadian wrestler. Say what you want about Canadian wrestlers. Still got ragdolled. And even Casey Kenny, I thought one of the best scramblers in the UFC. I thought if anybody was going to get Merab's number, it was going to be Casey. And no difference there. Merab Dvalishvhili keeps getting it done. Now, I think Cody Stamann is probably one of the best technical wrestlers out of that bunch, but I still think he's going to have trouble here with Merab Dvalishvili's pace, pressure, not letting you breathe, staying in your face, throwing you to the ground, getting back up, throwing you back to the ground, whatever it is. Merab's motor is just second to none in this division. We don't have any fighter that can resemble this type of approach. There's literally nobody. So at a certain point, it's going to catch up to him. I don't think it's the Cody fight. I think this one he's actually going to be able to get. And the last thing I'll say about this, Merab reminded me of like Billy Quarantillo in the sense that Billy had that like Homer Simpson approach where he just kept getting whooped on and then would just come back later in the fight and just get the win. In the sense of that, I thought once he fought a really technical, good fighter, he's going to end up losing just like he did against Gavin Tucker. And I thought I thought Cody Stamann was going to be the Gavin Tucker in this situation, but I just don't see it after running the tape. I think that Merab is going to get the better of him pretty much everywhere it goes. I think the best shot Cody has to win the fight is if it's like a first round knockout, flash KO or something like that. But when's the last time you've seen Cody Stamann knock somebody up, right? That's the other question mark here. So I'm expecting this to go to a decision. I'm expecting Merab to be a step ahead pretty much at all times. And I think that he gets the decision victory here. I believe the line on Merab to win by decision is -135. That's accurate, especially considering that he's a -255 favorite here. Line on the money line seems a little bit wide, but after you run the tape, you kind of understand why. But you can still go with the decision line, which I think is accurately priced. And I think you can still get some good value on that. Cody, how are you seeing this one?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to bet against Merab Dvalishvili because he's just going to go out there with that reckless, ruthless game plan. Just take you down repeatedly, rinse, and repeat. If he doesn't tire, then you're going to have a very tough night on your hands. And he's shown like he's got pretty good cardio. The question is what happens when he runs into a better wrestler? Yeah, I think that's the $1,000,000 question everyone's asking. He's had his way against all these guys. And you mentioned some good wrestlers in the mix. Frankie Saenz wrestled out of Arizona collegiately, 11 takedowns. Brad Katona can wrestle a little bit, 5. Casey Kinney, 12. Gustavo Lopez, who apparently can wrestle, 13. It's like, man, these are huge numbers. But I keep going to the John Dodson fight. John Dodson fight, he struggles mightily for the takedowns. In fact, he goes 2 for 20 on takedown attempts. So lots of takedown attempts, but not a whole lot of results. And as a result, John Dodson starts fighting with his hands low and worrying about the takedown, and it allows Merab Dvalishvili to actually outstrike him. Open up with his hands, hurt him a little bit, and eventually take that decision. But again, it just gives you that idea. You nailed it. A more technical fighter is eventually going to beat this guy. Now, the Frankie Saenz fight against Rob, like how do you take a guy down 11 times, but then lose the fight? It makes no sense because he gets outstruck, right? So again, it comes back to bad judging. We assume that the guy with getting all the takedowns is going to win. We assume the guy with top control is going to win. But Merab Dvalishvili's low output. Like, he doesn't have a whole lot of striking arsenal in terms of standing. But when he gets these guys to the ground, there's not much top control. Like, they pop up. That's why you take a guy down 12 times.
Yeah.
Because he gets up 4 times in every round. That in itself is going to be extremely difficult, I believe. It's like you can't progressively go forward with this game plan of just taking these guys down, and then they're popping back up, they're outstriking you, you're taking them down. Because eventually a bad judge is going to see it the other way. Happened in the Frankie Saenz fight, and it could theoretically happen again here too. When I think of Cody Stamann, I mean, he's a good wrestler. He's another guy that was out of Michigan top team, but he's now at Extreme Couture now, making a lot of improvements, can wrestle, has fought in good guys like Aljamain Sterling, Jimmy Rivera, has generally given a good account of himself. But if he comes out there and is able to counter wrestle a little bit, even so, does get taken down, but just like everybody else, get back up. It's what he does in that in-between. It's what he does when he is standing that might be able to come out here and get the victory. But fuck, man, again, tape studying, like you said, he himself is low output as well. He doesn't have a defining submission game. He doesn't have a defining knockout power. So when he wins, it's these close fights, and that's how he'd win this one. Split decision, He's going to have to keep it close, keep it competitive, and have it go to the scorecards. But I do consider him a live underdog. I just think this thing's going to the distance. If you take Stamann, you probably juice it and go Stamann by decision. If you take Merab Dvalishvili, you juice it and you take that Merab Dvalishvili by decision. I like the fight just to go the distance, but that's 3-1. That's a prop parlay piece. And again, you never really like to go down that route. But again, I mean, they're both good guys. They're both wrestlers. They're both. I just think Dvalishvili is that ability to just that relentless pressure. Like, is Stamann going to get tired? Is Stamann going to eventually get frustrated? Or are the judges just going to count all these takedowns? Like, all great questions. The last thing is Paul Shaughnessy mentioned this, and it got me thinking, is that, Merab Dvalishvhili is always in camp with Aljamain Sterling, right? Sterling is actually a former opponent. Cody Stamann could have been a big help, but Sterling just got surgery. He's out like 7 months.
Yep.
Now that's a body that you don't have there, right? They just watched their teammate Chris Weidman snap his leg in half over the weekend. Like, you know what I mean? Like, the vibe might not quite be there. He might not be in great at the shape that we're expecting him to be in, and he didn't look great in the Dodson fight. He actually got outstruck in the second round against John Dodson. Didn't lose the round on any of the judges' scorecards. But you rewatch it, it's just like someone's going to expose him eventually. And you're right. Maybe it's not Cody Stamann, but I think Cody Stamann's live in that spot at least. So the prop that I like, Spike Go the Distance, that's the coward's way out. It's 3-1, but I do like that play. And I think you're not far off. If you're taking Dvalishvhili, take that -130, take it by decision. If you are going Stamann, again, like he's probably going to take this one by decision, if anything, right? So I think this thing's going 15. The official play, I don't know, gun to my head. I'm going to take the dog. I'm going to go to Cody Stamann, but this could want to be one of those people on Twitter telling me, haha, I told you so, 15 minutes after the bell rings because he's been ridden like a little pony out there and taken down 15 times. But I think because of the way that the line's priced, it's Dvalishvhili. If I put him on one of my parlays, he'd be my apple pie shitter. That's the feeling I'm getting.
That's why you parlayed the over 2.5 instead of picking.
Hell yeah, buddy. Hell yeah.
I know you like going with the fighters strictly, but I do like throwing the over-unders in there every now and then. The last thing I'll say about this matchup is Cody Stamann is probably one of the better striking wrestlers out there in terms of he kind of adopted that Darren Cruikshank style, like that karate type of style. I believe they were training partners in the past up there in Michigan. So maybe that's something that he's going to try to look to kind of capitalize with. But again, low output, so it gives you a little bit of cause for concern. But yeah, very interesting. We should definitely find out a lot about Merab Dvalishvhili this weekend and how he fares in this fight. All right, let's move on to the next fight. A fight that I'm a lot more confident in. We got Sean Strickland going up against Krzysztof Jotko. Sean Strickland, obviously, he had that quick run where he had like 2 fights in 2 weeks. First and foremost, makes that return after, I believe, a motorcycle accident. Comes in against Jack Marshman and absolutely torches him. Jack Marshman, the guy has a chin on him for days. Probably one of the best moments of the COVID era was Sean Strickland just yelling at him throughout the fight, like, go down, Jack. Go down, Jack. Why don't you go down? And then even like the last 10 seconds of the fight, we got 10 seconds. I'm going to give you a chance to win. Like, if that's not a spit in the face to your opponent, like, God, after that, I love Sean Strickland. The guy is an absolute beast. And then after, obviously, 2 weeks after that, goes out there and fights Brendan Allen at a 190-pound catchweight and torches him as well, too. And we see, like, the thing that made Sean Strickland so great before his little bit of a layoff. I mean, even before that loss that he took to Zaleski dos Santos, right? That was one of those weird spinning hook kicks where he thought he had his hand high enough to block the kick, but the kick still sneaks in just to the back of the head and drops Sean Strickland, and then he ends up losing that way. But I think a lot of people are reading a little bit too much into that, saying that the guy's chinny and, he can't take a punch or anything like that. But literally the only finish on his record. So can you really, say that truthfully about him? I don't think so. I think Sean Strickland is definitely one of the more skilled fighters in this division. Very good striking game, uses the range very well. Questionable striking defense at times, but does a good enough job in terms of rolling with punches and getting out of the way of big punches. But he does have a brown belt in jiu-jitsu under his sleeves too that he can definitely bring out if it's required. And I think that Jotko, for him to win this fight, he's probably going to go that way that he took the Alan Abadovsky fight, which was get the fight to the ground and try to grind this fight out. But I just don't see him having that success here, right? You're talking about Sean Strickland, who has very good takedown defense, and not to mention that brown belt in jiu-jitsu, like I said, the actual number in terms of takedown defense, 81% takedown defense for Sean Strickland compared to the 35% takedown accuracy of Krzysztof Jotko. So we know Jotko is a striker, right? He might even have the speed advantage here, which is interesting, but I don't think that's going to cut it for him here against Strickland, who's just going to be able to piece him up. I'll give Jotko the benefit of the doubt. I think that he'll be able to survive all 15 minutes, but I think the majority of those 50 minutes is going to be Sean Strickland absolutely molly-whopping this guy on the feet. If he wants to take it to the ground, I think Strickland has the advantage on the ground too. The guy's a big dude. I know Jotko is a big guy himself, but it seems like Sean Strickland carries it much more differently than what Jotko brings to the table. So in terms of method of victory, obviously I got Sean Strickland here, -270. Might be a little bit too chalky for people, but maybe not somebody who's looking for a lock of the night play. But in terms of a prop, we're looking at Sean Strickland to win via decision at plus 140, and I don't think that's a bad line at all. Jotko, obviously, his last 2 losses were by finish. Uriah Hall coming back from the depths of hell, coming back and knocking him out. And then obviously Brad Tavares, but who the hell gets knocked out by Brad Tavares? Not a lot of people. So that is a little bit questionable, especially when you're going up against a guy like Sean Strickland, who throws a lot of heat on his punches. But I will give Jotko the benefit of the doubt. I'm going plus 140, Strickland by decision. How are you seeing this one?
Yeah, I got Sean Strickland as well. Jotko, you mentioned Jotko. We know he's a striker. This is a guy's a striker. See, here's the thing, in my opinion. Jotko used to be a striker. Jotko was a guy that came to the UFC and had some decent Muay Thai. A decent Polish linear fighter, in and out of the pocket, moves well, good footwork, has some decent pop on his power. And quite honestly, I mean, he's fought a lot of really low-level guys that are no longer with the promotion. When you look at his run, right? Bruno Santos, cut, Magnus Siedenblad, Tor Trong, Scott Askin, Brad Ascott, Tamdan McCrory, Talis Laitis, Dave Brandt.
Tamdan McCrory.
And Dan McCrory, my boy. I know. I got him on Facebook. Fucking hilarious. Very political these days.
Of course.
Yeah, whack. That was a crazy. Tamdan McCrory got knocked out his last UFC fight, and he didn't remember anything from a month prior.
Wow.
I know. Scary shit. Anyways, that's like a run of like 8 straight fighters no longer a job with the company. And also most of those guys have like long since retired. Not even just like fighting on the regional somewhere else, but just like are no longer part of the game. Hall and Brad Tavares, they're both cutting in the UFC still, and they both knock him out. As you mentioned, the Brad Tavares one is especially intriguing because like who else is Brad Tavares knocked out, right? Phil Baroni. Phil's my boy. No disrespect to the New York badass. It's just like when that happened, he got knocked out by Hall. It's no problem. He actually won the first round against Uriah Hall. Second round gets caught. Hall's been known to do that to a guy or two. No problem. Getting caught by Tavares, okay, not a power puncher, but still a top talent guy. It's that moment changes him. So now he gets Alan Almondovsky, and he just wants to wrestle. He goes 4 for 4 on takedowns. Takes him down in every single round. Doesn't look to strike. Doesn't want to throw hands at all. Just looks, and hey, he needs the win, right? 3-fight losing streak. Just you need to secure the victory. But shit, dude, he tried to do the same thing against Marc-Andre Barrios. Shoot 7 takedowns. Got one of them. 1 of 7 takedowns against Barrios. And this is not Sanford MMA Barrios.
No.
This is Barrios not looking particularly good in the UFC Barrios, right? 1 for 7 on takedowns, wins a split decision. And you go to like MMA decisions. A couple of people did actually score the fight for Barrios. One of the judges also scored the fight for Barrios. Not the greatest look. Then the Eric Anders fight. He loses the 3rd round to Eric Anders. His cardio didn't look particularly good. And wouldn't you know it, 0 for 5 on takedowns. Just like wants to get these fights to the ground. Wants to try to peel his opponent to the ground. Problem is that because he's a striker, his base is striking, he's just not that good of a wrestler. He can't get these guys to the ground. So it's a lot of cage work, man. It's a lot of holding the guy against the cage. And is it effective? It is effective. But again, judging by one judge giving it to Marc-Andre Barrios, they're not always going to give you the win just on cage control. So Sean Strickland, dude's a better striker. He's got more power, 30 years old, making improvements. Had like a 2.5-year layoff because of that motorcycle crash, wrecked his knee. Since coming back, you see real-time motion, confidence getting there, puts a beating on Jack Marshman, but he's having fun. He's getting loose. I'm on record saying many times, best thing that could happen for him is getting 15 minutes against Marshman as opposed to sparking Marshman in 2 minutes. Because he had such a long layoff, he needed time. He needed octagon time. He needed to experience it and let his hands fly and see what works and what doesn't work. That was all good stuff. And then coming to the Brandon Allen fight, he kills Brandon Allen. And you see it's like, shit, man, this kid's flowing. This kid's good. Trained a lot of time out of Dan Henderson's camp in California, the former Team Quest in Temecula, working with guys like Sam Alvey, Chris Curtis, obviously Henderson himself, spending time in Las Vegas now, Extreme Couture. All the guys that have trained with him have said he's an absolute monster in the gym. It's when is he going to realize that potential? But he's a confidence-based guy. I think his confidence is going right now. So I think he goes out there. I think he lands his hands. I think he does some damage. Jotko being knocked out by Brad Tavares would definitely want to suggest that Sean Strickland could also put some combinations on him. But the way Jotko is going to approach this fight isn't a stand-up battle. He's going to look to press him into the cage and hold him there. I don't think he successfully takes down Sean Strickland. But could he have success holding him up against the cage for pockets of the round? Yeah, could. I'm really hoping Strickland separates and puts some hot fire on his chin, puts him out. That TKO prop looks good. I would say safe money. Again, gun to my head. Because, I want to be honest at the beginning of the show. I don't like a lot of these props. I really don't. Gun to my head, I would say Strickland by decision. But, again, if he was to knock out Jotko, it would not be surprising. The way he took out Brandon Allen, put an absolute beating right through him, And the Jack Marshman fight, I mean, yeah, that's why he's yelling out to Jack, like, "Bud, go down. Dude, I'm starting to feel bad. Like, you got a family, Holmes. You gotta go. You got someone to go home to. What are you doing?"
Yeah.
But it's like, dude, that's good shit. Jocko not going to take that same amount of punishment, but Jocko not going to stand in front of you either. He will try to force the action a bit. So my pick is going to be Strickland. That's obvious. Money line suggests he's a big favorite. Everyone's kind of on the same page. But yeah, as far as a prop, like I would go with the decision prop. But like shit, I hate losing decision props when my guy gets KO'd with like 2-3 minutes left or something stupid. Like it's so close. Too much. Yet so far. Yeah, it does happen all the time. You know, it's like you're so close to this decision. You're so close. 2-3 minutes left. That's why I like the over 2.5. I hate betting it. If you're gonna bet over 2.5, might as well just take fight goes the distance. Come on, it's 2.5 minutes.
True.
But man, that 2.5 minutes, they're so tired in that last 2.5 minutes that like anything can happen. It's a crazy sport, but that is why we love it.
For sure. All right, let's move on to the next fight here. It seems like we're getting a little bit of a war between Kamosi and Sordi in PFL right now. They're in the third round, sloppy as hell, as we would expect. Interested to see how that one ends up playing out. All right, let's actually move on to the next one here. We got Ion Cutelaba against Dustin Jacoby, -140 on Cutelaba, +120 on Jacoby. Jacoby stepping in on short notice here for Devin Clark. And I'm interested to know how much this will actually affect him. Obviously, we know he's coming back just shy of 2 months ago, where he was able to pull up a decision victory over Maxime Grishin. A lot of people didn't think he won that fight, but we know what Jacoby brings to the table. The guy likes to strike, has a good calf kick, obviously a big striking background, Muay Thai, kickboxing, and boxing. Was in the UFC before, eventually got cut, and now he's back in the UFC, showing a little bit more, obviously with the new training camp as well, up there in Colorado. What Ion Cutelaba, the guy always has a lot of question marks about him, right? He's almost as much of a wild card as somebody that fought last week, and Alex Oliveira. The guy has a ton of power in his hands. He has a decent wrestling game as well. Just as we saw in the Khalil Roundtree fight, quickly got him down and eventually got him out of there. And I think he could do the same thing to Dustin Jacoby here. I'm just not sure and completely sold on it. The spot that I do like is this fight getting extended a little bit, though. I do see that if Cutelaba decides to go out there and just grapple fuck Dustin Jacoby, which is probably what he should do, before Jacoby really starts getting his kicks off and starts really laying on him like that. The over 1.5 doesn't look too bad at +100. I think this one could find itself late into the second round, probably early third round. But I think ultimately we'll see Cutelaba land takedowns and get that TKO finish from on top. I like Jacoby. I think he's a decent talent, and I like his striking style. But I think that this is a bad matchup for him, especially on short notice. Not to mention short notice, like the guy only took the fight a week ago, right? So how good is his conditioning? Ion Cutelaba's conditioning is something that I've always questioned in the past, but luckily for him, Dustin Jacoby isn't a crazy cardio machine either. And again, add in the fact that he's coming in on short notice, how good is he ready to actually go out there and perform for 15 minutes against a berserker like Cutelaba? So I like Cutelaba by KO at +120, not too bad of a line. I think he gets it going with his wrestling, and I think he takes the victory home pretty much that way. Do you see this one playing out similarly?
Yeah, I agree with you. So let's draw the comparison for Dustin Jacoby and Chris Camozzi. Once upon a time, they actually fought. Now they're both training partners. Then they both went to Glory Kickboxing, where they kind of reinvented themselves as kickboxers. Now they're both back in MMA, and ground game's costing it for them. Yeah, I mean, he can strike. Dustin Jacoby can strike. But for a guy that's out of Colorado at elevation, he doesn't have a very good gas tank. You see that routinely in a lot of his fights. He does fatigue the later the fight goes. He's also taken fights as high as heavyweight. And I think that coming down to 205, even though dude's probably got a frame of a middleweight, maybe not so anymore. He has grown a lot. I don't think it's the easiest weight cut. Maybe that's affecting him. He's also 33 years old, not exactly the youngest fighter going, not exactly old, but I don't know how much more Dustin Jacoby advances from this. It's that fight with Maxime Grishin that's a massive no bueno for me.
Yeah.
Is that I had him on every single ticket. I had him absolutely everywhere, and just utmost confidence that Maxime Grishin doesn't have any power. Dustin Jacoby is a far better kickboxer. This fight was largely going to play in the kickboxing range because Maxime Grishin just didn't really have the wrestling to take him down. This would be easy money for Dustin Jacoby. We won the bet. We learned our lesson. It was an absolute sloppy fight. He got very fatigued quick. He got dropped twice by Maxime Grishin. Now, when you look at Maxime Grishin versus Antigulov one fight prior, it's like, this guy doesn't have any power. No power. Shows a lot of first-round finishes on his record. But, my God, he had Dustin Jacoby hurt. He had him tired. He had him beat up. in the third round, it's anybody's fight. Honestly, it is 1-1 in the third round. It's anybody's fight. And I thought Maxim Grishin did enough to win it. We ended up getting a Jacoby decision. I wasn't going to complain. We cashed the bets, but it was like I can't in good confidence, in good conscience, bet this guy going forward. And beyond all that is that he was given the fight that he wanted against Maxim Grishin, right? Maxim Grishin stood with him and struck with him the entire time. And still, he's not overly prevailing. I would have to say that this is a tough spot for sure. I mean, with Justin Jacoby, the upside for him is he keeps his fight standing. But with Ion Cutelaba, man, he's just going to chuck bombs. And hopefully, again, this is another guy with the skill to win the fight, with the ring IQ to potentially blow it for himself. But he's a former European Combat Sambo champion. The guy is solid. The guy does have good takedowns. It's whether or not he's going to use those good takedowns. Keep in mind, this was a dude at 205 pounds, took down Jared Cannonier 6 times, right? The fight with Khalil Roundtree took him down 4 times. Now, what do those guys got in common? Super menacing power punchers, man. Who wants to stand in front of Khalil Roundtree? He has no ground game, suspect cardio. But why would you want to stand in front of him? Jared Cannonier? Want to stand in front of Jared Cannonier? No. Take these guys down. He was smart enough to realize that in those fights, goes out and gets the takedowns, and as a result, cruises to victories. He's got to realize that in this fight. They're not even as those guys are better strikers than Justin Jacoby, don't get me wrong, but at least there's that ability to recognize this guy's a pure striker, and I have wrestling. I do have ground skills. Now, people want to say he has bad cardio, and I agree, but he's 27 years old, and his last 2 fights are Magomed and Ankalaev. What was he supposed to do? What was he supposed to do? Is he going to take down Magomed and Ankalaev? No. Was he going to drag him into deeper waters and capitalize on his bad gas tank? No. He had to catch him with a bomb. He had to go out there. He had to let his hands fly and catch him with a bomb. Did not work, but it's Magomed Ankalaev. I'm going to give him a pass there. I think that this is a much more winnable fight. The path to victory is there. Cutelaba needs to go out there and get those takedowns. If he does get those takedowns, over 1.5 I like. But beyond that, you know what I mean? Like if he's on top of Justin Jacoby and he's raining down some ground and pound from top, if he's able to mount him, especially land some of those elbows that he did against Khalil Roundtree, he could take Justin Jacoby out. If he, as 50 Cent would say, get rich or die trying, and he don't get rich in there, then he gonna die trying. Like Justin Jacoby will tire him out and pick him apart. So it screams fight doesn't go the distance, but I think it's going to take them a little while to break the other guy. Just go out there and knock him out in the first round, right? That being said, Maxim Grishin dropped him in the first round, and that one was extremely worrisome to me. So lots to consider. Again, as you can tell, confidence level not super high on a specific prop, but I think Cutelaba gets the job done. And the prop that I like the most in this spot is that over 1.5.
Yeah, that 1.5 is going to be a sweat. Those 7.5 minutes will definitely be a sweat, especially if Cutelaba is able to get that takedown nice and early. Ooh, those elbows are going to be raining down, and we know that for sure. So I'm glad that we see it the same way. Jacoby looks to be a fade moving forward, but maybe he turns his fortune around this weekend against Cutelaba, but we like Ion Cutelaba to get the finish here. All right, let's get to the co-main event here. This is a highly debated one all week. We have seen a ton of line movement for it as well, too. We got -170 on Giga Chikadze, who opened up at -240 and is now at -170-ish, and then we got +150 on the veteran Cub Swanson, 37-year-old Cub Swanson coming back. I think this is now 1 fight removed since he got his knee absolutely dismantled by somebody 3 or 4 weight classes above him, and Jake Shields. Probably not the type of injury you want to have at this age and at this stage of your career, especially for something that you probably weren't getting paid as much for as you would be for a UFC fight. But interesting fight here again for Giga. Obviously the biggest fight in Giga's career. A co-main event spot going up against a legend like Cub Swanson. I think this is a great fight for him to go out there and showcase his striking, and that's obviously what has brought him to the dance, and not to mention his ever-evolving grappling game, right? Like the way he was able to reverse who was it? Jamal Emmers, when he was on the ground. That was very impressive to me. The way he was able to nullify the amount of damage that was coming down to him from Jamal Emmers as well, too. That was very impressive. And we know that's something that he's going to be working very hard on over there at Kings MMA to try to get his hand raised every time out. But his striking game is where it gets going, right? He has a 4-inch height advantage as well as a 4-inch reach advantage in this fight. And I think he's going to use every single inch of that here against Cub Swanson. Now, Cub is a little bit more unorthodox of a striker that likes to, throw a ton of different stuff. But I think his best path to victory would be to get this fight to the ground and hopefully pull off a submission or actually grind him out that way. The issue is I just don't think that Cub Swanson has the greatest wrestling game, and I think that's going to cause him trouble here. One, in terms of closing the distance against Cub Swanson, or sorry, closing the distance against Giga Chikadze, and two, actually getting him down. I think that's a game, that's a part of Giga Chikadze's game that's going to be improving on a fight-to-fight basis. His kicking game is strong as hell, right? I think that's going to truly cause Cub Swanson the problems in terms of actually closing the distance and getting it going. But I think it's ultimately the striking game of Giga that's going to be too much for Cub here. Now, Cub kind of turned the clock back around last time against Daniel Pineda, coming in as a dog and absolutely cleaning the clock of Daniel Pineda in that second round. But that first round was fucking insane, back and forth. Both guys having a ton of success, not to mention that Daniel Pineda leg kick, which was pretty much crippling the movement of Cub Swanson. But Cub, endures it and then comes back and eventually gets the victory in that second round. So good win for him there. I just don't have him see him having that much success here against Giga. I think Giga's going to have him completely covered in the striking realm. And I think that I'll give the benefit of the doubt to Cub Swanson's chin here. I think we'll see Giga play a safe fight and actually pull this off via decision. And Giga by decision is plus 170. I like that line. I think that's a pretty solid line for a fighter that I'm expecting to go out there and point fight and not overextend himself against a veteran like Cub Swanson, who, one, might be looking for takedowns, and two, has a decent striking game of his own. Obviously not to the level of Giga, though. So I like Giga here. It's crazy that the line is continuing to move towards the Cub Swanson side. I'd be very interested to see what it looks like on fight day or even after the weigh-ins tomorrow. But if it stays around that minus 170 range, I think it's a great bet, to be honest, as a money line. But we are here for props, and I'm going to give you guys Cub Swanson, Giga Chikadze via decision at plus 170. How do you see this one?
Yeah, again, it's another tough fight to get a read on. So Giga Chikadze is probably the better striker, right? And also the fact that he's 6 feet against 5'8" for Cub Swanson. He's got 4 inches in the height department, 4 inches on the reach department. And one thing I don't like about Giga Chikadze is that he's pretty low output. Like, it's one thing about him. But man, that's just because he wants to counter punch. He's a natural counter puncher. Kyokushin black belt. Guy's a former Glory kickboxer, obviously. He's got that accreditation. He's got that skill in his back pocket. This is MMA. You need to put those other skills to good use. You need to learn that takedown defense. You need to learn that wrestling. And that's what I'm not fully sold on. I'm like, this is a big task, no doubt about it. It's 37-year-old Cub. It is a beaten up, war-torn, seen better days version of Cub. But we all used to laugh at Giga Chikadze about the guys he fought in the regional scene. These guys are 0-16. These guys are like 0-8. Those are the guys he fought before coming to the UFC. But let's keep in mind, right? That Brandon Davis fight, he got taken down 4 times. Jamal Emmer's fight, he got taken down twice, but Jamal Emmers could have done much better with it. Erwin Rivera is not a wrestler. Omo Morales is not a wrestler. Jamie Simmons is not a wrestler. I can see where the path to victory still remains the same. You need to get this guy to the ground. That would be the fact. Remember, even on Contender Series, he lost to Austin Springer. Yep. Austin Springer scored 4 takedowns. So, again, no doubt he's been working on his takedown defense at King's MMA. No doubt he's got the best wrestlers he can, the best jiu-jitsu guys coming in and working with him. It's that we don't really know how much he's improved. He stuffed the 1 takedown from Omar Morales, and as you mentioned, the Jamal Emmers fight, he did a good job getting back up. But if Emmers would have fought a smarter game plan, Emmers could have routinely just kept taking him back down and wouldn't have gotten robbed on a split. By the way, did you think Giga actually won that fight? Like, it's a close fight. I was pissed off with Emmers for fighting a bad game plan, so I was okay with Giga winning. But still, man, that's a close fight. Could go either way. A few more takedowns, a little more top control for Emmers. It's his fight. Cubs got to go out there and, again, fight a smart game plan. Now, we've been talking about Ion Kudalaba and TJ Brown fighting smart game plans, right? But it's because they both have paths to victory that involve wrestling. It's whether they're going to be smart enough to take that path to victory and not burn themselves out and get gassed out. Cubs a savvy veteran of the game, man. He's fought an absolute who's who. You talked about Randa Markos earlier in the list of opponents that she's had. Like, Cubs been there, done that against everybody. And as soon as you write him out, oh, this guy's not good anymore. Oh, he can't quite take a punch anymore. He's not an elite level guy. He's always got one more trick up his sleeve. He's always got one more hurrah. Now, when I think about Giga Chikadze, I think to myself, you know what? He's like a 60 strike output guy in a 15-minute fight at best. You look at his numbers, right? And you look at a lot of these fights. The Omar Morales fight, 65. The Erwin Rivera fight, 61. The Jamal Emmers fight, 38. Brandon Davis, 59. It's low output. Cubs eclipsed 100 significant strikes 4 times in his career. He landed 135 against Crow and Gracie, 129 against Shane Burgos, in a fight he arguably got robbed against Shane Burgos. 209 against Artem Lobov. Mind you, that was 5 rounds. 111 against Doo Ho Choi. Output's not a problem. Now, I agree. Giga Chikadze better striker. Daniel Pineda hurt Cub Swanson his last time out. Like, I am agreeing. His best days are behind him. But there's still a little bit left in the tank. Now, Cub can strike long enough with his volume to at least make it appealing to the judges, keep it close on the scorecards to the judges, but his path to victory is not strike for 15 minutes. It's mix in the wrestling, mix in those takedowns. Cub's not a great wrestler per se, but he also knows how to wrestle. He's a solid BJJ black belt. He needs to get this fight to the ground. If he doesn't, he's going to be intercepted at range, getting kicked a whole lot, probably goes down on the judges' scorecards, and then loses the fight. But if he can make this a dog fight, who prevails better in dog fights than Cub Swanson? The Doo Ho Choi fight of the year. It goes into a really dark place. He pulls it. You were there live. I was there live. Yeah. Absolutely crazy fight, intense. But he goes to that dark place to get there, right? It's impressive. The Shane Burgos fight, 129 to 134. It's just a war. It's an absolute war, tit for tat. Both men taking their best shots. And anybody that knows me knows my absolute love for Shane Burgos. Love him. Cub Swanson gave me one hell of a sweat that night. But then he upsets against Kron Gracie and upsets against Daniel Pineda, cashes his 2 dog tickets, and then the Pineda fight's the same thing. You want to make this a dog fight? He broke him. He tired. Now Pineda's got bad cardio. Let's be real here. But once Cub started to have his way, he was able to put a pace on him. That's what he needs to do here. He's got to put a pace on Giga Chikadze. He needs to get him to the ground. He needs to work him, and then that would open up some grappling. And if he's able to mix in that grappling, then he's live. He's live as an underdog spot. I like the straight up underdog play on Cub more than anything else. But I suppose a Cub by decision. If I had to, again, gun to my head, go with a prop. The other thing I'm looking at is this to bank of some rounds, right? Yeah. If Cub's going to win, he's going to score with some takedowns. He's going to have to grind him out. Could he open up a finish later in the fight potentially? With Giga, Giga's knocked out Jamie Simmons' last time out. And he also dropped Omar Morales, and he dropped whoever he fought, Erwin Rivera. He knocked down Erwin Rivera. He's scored 3 knockdowns his last 3 fights. But the power, especially in Glory as well, you look at his entire body of work, the knockouts aren't quite there, and not really in a lot of these early knockouts. So I like that over 1.5, but it's minus 325. The way Cubs fights, and he's fighting a caliber striker like Giga, not in on it. So, like, I hate to coward out on you and say, one of the best fights on the card, co-main event, I don't want any action on it. I will have small action on it, but I don't think it's not smart money. There's not a great lean to be had here unless you're going to take the underdog straight up as the dog money plus 150. But we're here to talk about parlays, and the only thing I can really say that I would take that shot at is if I was taking a shot at Swanson, I think Swanson's able to get it done by decision, and that is currently sitting at plus 290, right? So if anything, that's the road I'm looking at. Giga could pull this off. Giga's 5-0 in the UFC. Like, look how many guys he's proven wrong. But Giga's got the world's greatest manager, man. Because even this fight, he gets an aged legend. Like, why doesn't he got to fight some D1 All-American? It's like, no. We'll take the long road around.
Talk about guys that have been around in the game. I think Gleison Tebow just stepped into the cage for PFL. God damn, might be on all the sauce now as well, considering that he has USADA no longer to have to worry about.
It's weird. So did you read that article? Gleison was saying that he fought like 7 weeks ago in a one-night tournament, won 2 fights. It was in Germany for a music video. Did you read anything?
I did not hear that. No.
Okay, whenever the show's done, check it out. Not that it matters. He's fighting right now, but according to him, and they got the music video. I watched it. According to him, he got paid to fly out to Germany and compete in a one-night tournament, 4 guys, one-night tournament, 2 fights, and for some money. And what it was a German rapper was filming a music video. They're like in the middle of nowhere. It's just like a cage, like helicopters flying overhead.
Wow.
Yeah. And apparently this German rapper was like, I want real fights. So they organized this one-night tournament. Gleison Tebow comes in. Gleison Tebow wins. But they show the footage, and Gleison did a whole interview about it. Fuck, I won these 2 fights. I wonder if they're going to put them on my record because technically they run sanction, this and that. But you watch it, dude, it looks straight up fixed. Like straight.
Oh, it looks fixed?
Yeah, the first one does. The second one, I could give the pass to the second one. Like, Gleison seems to take him down, and it's they slow down the shots, but it does look like he's chipping away at this guy with some ground and pound. But the first fight, it's like Gleison gets dropped on like a phantom shot. There's like a spinning back, like a fist.
Okay, I can't wait to check this
Gleison don't throw spinning back fist, man. Like,
yeah, of course.
I don't know. The whole thing just absolutely ranks. So I went against him at the Zepparino, but we'll see what happens.
All right. Hopefully we can wrap up this podcast before this fight finishes off. And obviously we got Rory coming up in the main event for PFL. We want to see how Sanford MMA Rory is able to put his game together, and hopefully he can win that check. But main event coming up right here. We got Jiri Prochazka going up against against Dominick Reyes. Very important fight for Jiri Prochazka. Obviously makes his stamp in the UFC by knocking out Volkan Oezdemir last year in July at UFC 251. And when is the last time you've seen Volkan Oezdemir drop like that, get finished like that? Never. He's been finished twice in the UFC before that, but it was ground and pound by Daniel Cormier, and then I believe it was a rear naked choke by Anthony Smith after Volkan had pretty much gassed out his tank there. But Jiri Prochazka has some serious power. The guy's 6'4" with an 80-inch reach and moves very well too. I'm not a big fan of his hands-down style, but that definitely works for him, right? He reminds me of like a light heavyweight version of Brandon Royval and Tony Ferguson in the fact that he just creates chaos, and that kind of is what he thrives in. Dominick Reyes, obviously much more technical of a fighter, has some good hands, making some good developments. Obviously, the one drum that they're banging on a lot, especially going into that John Jones fight, is he's athletic as shit. Okay, we get it. He's athletic. He played football or whatever the hell it was, and he possibly won the first 2 or 3 rounds of that John Jones fight, and then just takes the rest of the fight off, and ultimately costs himself a shot at that title. And then the next fight goes out there against Jan Blachowicz, gets another shot at the title. Blachowicz puts together a great game plan centered around that body kick, which just absolutely marks up Dominick Reyes a round and a half into the fight, and then he follows up with some punches and eventually gets Dominick Reyes out of there too. So that Polish power comes through for Jan Blachowicz. Now, will the Czech power of Jiri Prochazka come through here? And one thing that we have to actually kind of start to trust now, like the lower you go in weight classes, the more technique matters. The higher you go in weight classes, the less technique matters. It obviously still matters, don't get me wrong, but the power is high enough that it kind of subsides the amount of technical advantages the opponent might have. And that's exactly what I'm seeing here with Prochazka. Again, I'm not a big fan of his hands down style, but it works for him. And if he's able to stay away from the big power of Dominick Reyes, I could absolutely see him finding that opening and absolutely demolishing Dominick Reyes here, man. This guy has double the amount of experience that Dominick Reyes has. Now we can obviously say that Dominick Reyes has better level of competition, but you can't nullify the fact that Prochazka has been going out there and just, competing for as long as he has, over there in Risen and taking those, what do they have, that first round 10 minutes or something, some crazy thing like that. And he's able to actually go out there and have some solid performances. But putting King Mo and Brandon Halsey and CB Dalloway and Fabio Maldonado, shout out to Fabio Maldonado, up against Volkan Oezdemir and, everybody that Dominick Reyes has fought at this point in time, Jan Blachowicz, John Jones, all those guys. It pales in comparison. But we all have to recognize that Prochazka does have power in his hands. He's pretty fast for his weight class as well, and he does pack a lot of power. And I think that's ultimately what's going to be the decision maker here. However, I think it's going to take a little bit longer than people are expecting, which is why the line is set at over under 1.5. The over 1.5 at -155. I don't think that's a bad line. I think we can see these guys kind of take their time to get comfortable in this fight, especially Dominick Reyes coming off of 2 straight losses now. He really wants to make sure he's on his P's and Q's, especially with a crazy fighter like Prochazka in front of him. So I expect this to go, deeper into the second round. I think over 1.5 is not too bad of a shot, but ultimately I'm going to go with Prochazka. I think he lands that knockout shot. Say what you want about Dominick Reyes being way more technical, the better fighter, but I think that Prochazka power is something that's going to be something to be reckoned with inside the UFC. So I'll go with Prochazka by KO, obviously, which is +125, not too far off from that -130, which is his money line. So I don't know if you really want to take that +125 shot on the KO. But I do like Prochazka here. I think he gets it done. How do you like this one?
Man, actually stole the words right out of my mouth for the most part. I got Jiri knockout. I got the over 1.5. I hope that Jiri just goes for it right off the get-go. Yeah. So we're going to be sweating this over 1.5. It's that we're hoping that Dominick Reyes is durable enough to take some damage. And Reyes reminds me of Kelvin Gastelum in that he had a career best performance in a world title fight where he gave the defending champion all he could handle and ultimately ended up losing, a very spirited fight. But the same guy that's come back, mind you, he just had one fight against Jan Blachowicz. It's like he was super tentative. He didn't really look to engage him. And Dominick Reyes is a good athlete. You mentioned he played football. He also played baseball. He was like a 3-letter sport athlete in high school and played in college. Good athlete. But as far as MMA goes, like he's mostly just an athletic build fighter. He's got a decent kicking game, likes to kick the legs, stay to the outside, moves well, doesn't have a ton of power. As we saw in the John Jones fight, maybe he did win the first 3, but as soon as he starts to fatigue in 4 and 5, cardio didn't look great. The Jan Blachowicz fight, he was super predictable. And every time he got hit, he just kind of like winced up, like didn't like it. Now, mind you, it's Jan, it's Polish power, and Jan eventually gets a knockout. Like, I'm not trying to discredit him at all. that even his fight with Volkan Oezdemir, man, is he tentative. And mind you, I had him bet. I was glad he won, but it's like, did he win? Because it's a really close fight. He was way closer than it needed to be, and it's all on the basis of he just doesn't open himself up and let his hands go. He had a great fight against OSP. He had a great fight against John Jones. The other moments outside of that against the upper echelon guys, he hasn't really wowed me all that much. Now, coming into the UFC, a lot of people were on Volkan. I want to say Volkan was the favorite over Jiri in his debut. Yeah, right. And I'm all over Jiri, and man, I hated hearing it then, and I'm hearing the same things now. People are like, well, he's a can crusher. How's he going to do when he fights in the UFC? It's like, can crusher? First and foremost, look at his wins, right? So he's got a win over Darko Stosic, who fought in the UFC, but he's the only man to ever knock out Darko Stosic. That's what's important there, right? He's got wins over Satoshi Ishii, knocked him the fuck out, minute and a half. Satoshi Ishii, Olympic gold medalist for judo, former veteran, big name veteran. He knocked out Vadim Nemkov, the current Bellator 205-pound champion, caused him to quit on his stool between rounds. Kazushi Fishida, Pride veteran, right? Carl Albrechtsen, stud, dude. Swedish wrestling stud. Currently fights in Bellator as well. He's in their tournament and is looking good. Jay Kuhn is Jay Kuhn. Brendan Halsey's a former Bellator champion. King Mo's a former Strikeforce champion. Fabio Maldo, CB Dalloway, and Volkan Oezdemir are all UFC veterans. Like, fuck more does he have to do, man? He's been fighting in the Czech Republic and Japan. Like, he's been fighting all the best guys that he could. He's been looking good. Now, the other thing is like cardio. Oh, man, geez, he was tiring in a Volkan Oezdemir fight. First of all, he broke Volkan, right? He's tired. He's got hit in the first round. Fights with his hands low. You mentioned he's got defensive lapses for sure. He gets hit in the first round, but in the second round, like, he just keeps coming at him. And when you look at all these first round finishes, it's not like it's just, oh, well, he's got to finish you in the first round or is he done? Because you nailed it again, my friend. 10-minute rounds. He finishes Brendan Halsey the 6-minute mark, right? He finishes Carl Albrechtsen 9:57 into the round. He causes Nemkov to quit after the 10-minute mark. Like, good God. He also has a third round finish over King Mo to avenge himself. And there's another great point. Let's talk about his 3 pro losses, okay? King Mo, the former Strikeforce champion. Again, high-level loss. Abdul Karim Edilov was signed to the UFC. He's an absolute stud. He'll never fight in the UFC due to some political reasons, but the guy is a monster amongst men. And then he lost to Bojan Velikovic 9 years ago, and Bojan also UFC veteran. So his 3 losses are at a good level of competition, and he's got a lot of quality wins. He's only 28 years old. He seems to be extremely confident. He can take a good shot, keep coming after you. You got to put him lights out, or he's going to keep coming after you. Now, a guy like Volkan could, time's up, he could put you out. Those guys got power. Reyes is not a one-punch power guy. So to get Jiri off you, you're going to have to get his respect and turn his lights off. And if Reyes doesn't do that, he's going to take a lot of damage in those first 2 rounds. And I would think that Jiri puts him out in the first 2.5 rounds. So as much as I got the over 1.5, I don't know that it lasts a whole lot longer than that. What I'm going to look to also do is try to maybe live bet this fight. Whereas I got Jiri, and Jiri's going to go out there and deliver. If for whatever reason this is going into a 3rd or 4th round and Reyes is still there, maybe that's my chance to hedge out. I know I'll have a much better live betting opportunity to take Reyes after he's down a couple rounds. But yeah, my heart and my money seems to be on Jiri. So I'm going to agree with that over 1.5. I don't think he's just going to blow Reyes out of the water. But I think eventually this constant attack for 10 minutes, 12 minutes, 13 minutes, maybe Reyes topples over. And again, it's the main event. It's the most exciting fight on the card. It's got my money for fight of the night. Jiri fights probably going to be fight of the night, win or lose. But I'd rather bet these PFL shit show fights and make some money than just be like, oh, well, I needed one side of it, so I jumped on one side. I'm going to go Jiri, going to go knockout, going to go 1.5. But I've been doing good. I'm not betting on those one championship cards, and that's saved me a ton. That's exactly, and that's not like me, right? The PFL last week, I said, you know what? I'm going to bet Clay Collar, and that's it. I'm not even going to bet any of these parlays. I'm showing restraint. This card was too good to pass up. So barring Rory McDonald shitting in my apple pie, it's the spots. But I look at the card tomorrow, and I'm obviously going to have to tweet out parlays, but I'm not going to lie to you, man. I don't feel good about them at all. There's a lot of variables in these fights. Think about this for a minute. We've talked about this would, should, could in almost all of these fights. It's all like this guy could win the fight if he does this, but I'm not fully trustworthy he's going to do it. In order for me to have a perfect night, I need Luke Sanders to fight a good game plan. Okay? I need TJ Brown to fight a good game plan. Yeah. I need Randa Markos to fight a good game plan. I need
Women's MMA chalk minus 390 to come through.
Yeah, I need Ion Kudalaba to fight a good game plan. Those are all favorites, so I still need Cub Swanson and Cody Stamann to pull some magic out of their fucking ass. And then I've got Jiri, who fights like a madman in the main event. This does not sound like sound advice to be parlaying these guys in lengthy batches. But baby, that's what we do. That's what we're in the business of. We love the fight game. We love having the thrill. We love the sweat. It's all part of the game. And we're going to need some good bounces. But I'm hoping if Rory can pull it off, Ceferino can coast here this last round. We got to, just like last week with Clay Collard. Clay Collard built in that bankroll, lost it all. Randy Brown brought it back up, proceeded to lose that as well. It was an even money weekend. And I had a good weekend. A lot of fun fights, entertaining, and I didn't lose any money. I'll take that. But dude, if I hadn't hit a 450 Clay Collard and in a 550 Randy Brown, I'm losing money, right? So it wasn't a great weekend. This weekend, you got to be smart, got to be tight, got to build that bankroll again, just like we're going to try to do here at PFL, so we can take an educated shot on the UFC card.
Absolutely. And one last prop that I will bring up for this main event is actually fight won't start round 4 minus 210. Fight won't start round 3 minus 130. So that's just something a little bit more for people to digest. I'm expecting violence in this fight. I'm expecting a finish. I'd be very surprised if we see both guys go 25 minutes here. And somebody in the chat did say, my guy J-Dog right here, just load up on no distance at minus 345, and we should hopefully be covered when we've seen crazier things happen. All right, let's get into people's pretty much favorite part of the show here. We'll give you guys our 3 best bets, and then we're going to get the fuck up on out of here. Let me pull this bitch up. Oh, why is it giving me that flashing screen? Let me try that one more time. There we go. And bang. All right, so first and foremost, I got TJ Brown via sub plus 525. I think he's going to get Kai Kamaka down, slowly start to wear him out, and then that submission should present itself probably in the second or third round. We know Kai Kamaka, horrible gas tank. TJ Brown, questionable gas tank himself, but I'd rather take the grappler over the striker here who has absolutely no power in his hands. And I'm going TJ Brown via submission. Even inside the distance is not too shabby of a line if people are thinking to be going that way in case he goes for the ground and pound instead of the sub, but I like the sub plus 525. All right, next up, Benitez and Pearce starts round 3. I think that a lot of people are getting into that recency bias here, which is why the line is as close as it is for that starts round 3. Minus 105, I think, is a great line. I mean, Benitez and Pearce are quite durable guys outside of that Joe Lozon fight for Pearce, but I got to chalk that up to, UFC debut in Joe Lozon's backyard. Let's give him the benefit of the doubt there. And Benitez has notoriously been pretty durable unless he's fighting a guy like Sadiq Youssef. So I do see that fight getting into the 10, 11, 12-minute mark and cashing that round 3 starting at minus 105. And then lastly, I told you guys it was going to be a little bit more chalky. I got to go with the over 2.5 in the Markos and Pinheiro fight at minus 220. More often than not, when you get women's MMA fights, you're looking at minus 350, minus 400 for the over 2.5s. But this week, we have Pinheiro, who's on a 6-fight winning streak with all first-round finishes, but that's over people on the regional scene, people that probably wouldn't cut it inside the UFC, and then obviously most recently on the Dana White Contender Series, where she was able to dispatch of Stephanie Frausto within 3 minutes or so. But Markos, very durable, has, I believe only 2 losses in the UFC via finish. That was to Courtney Casey over 5 or 6 years ago, and then obviously Mackenzie Dern a couple fights ago. But I do expect the durability of Markos to pay off here, and I do see this fight going late. Now, the only question mark in terms of this is how good Pinheiro's gas tank is. If she has horrible gas tank issues, she could possibly just, roll over and die in that third round, and then that would probably be the only way this over 2.5 does not hit. But I'm going to give her the benefit of the doubt. I think she'll have enough cardio to make it 15 minutes, but I don't know if it'll be enough for her to actually win by decision. But at least we get covered with both people, no matter who wins by decision here, with the over 2.5 at minus 220. All right, Cody, you're up.
All right. Well, I definitely pussed out here early and took the coward's way out, but I just don't see how this fight is anything but that. I one time watched Merab Dvalishvhili get choked unconscious, and the decision prop still hit. So, I mean, yeah, he's just a decision machine. He just gets on these guys, he grinds them, multiple takedowns, extends the fights out, and just doesn't really have that big power, that big submission game. Cody Stamann is extremely durable. It's been one hell of a task to take him out anyways, and Merab Dvalishvhili just doesn't have that finishing ability. Flip side to that, Cody Stamann's a grinder, man. Good wrestling, going to come in good shape. He's highly motivated for this fight. I do believe he has a slight striking advantage. I do believe he can keep this close, competitive, win some of these exchanges. get taken down, get back up, make them work, and hopefully squeak it out on 2 of the 3 judges' scorecards. Regardless of who wins this thing, it's going the distance. So minus 300, it's a little bit big, I get it, but I'm going to parlay that with a couple of other spots that I like. Moving on, got to get a little more bold, and we're going to go with a little plus money, 130. Sean Strickland by decision. Again, Sean Strickland is the kind of guy that could go out there, let his hands go, and put Jocko away if he's feeling good. You know, the way he beat Brendan Allen, the way he beat up on Jack Marshman, is Jocko going to take that? The difference there is that Marshman stood right in front of him, right? He's a boxer. He's a Welsh boxer from the Army. That's his style. He's not going to get away from that at this stage in his career. He is who he is. Brendan Allen was very cocky. Like, he was very dismissive of everything that Sean Strickland brought to the table. And being at Stanford MMA, he was like, I've got some great striking under my belt now. Check it out. Instead of using the grappling, which would have been Sean Allen's best path to victory. So honestly, when I think about this as well, I think, geez, Jocko's not going to do that. He'll try to grind him. And in grinding him, he should slow this thing down and hopefully survive the 15 minutes. But I think Sean Strickland's going to stuff the takedowns, land the better striking, and as a result, pick up this decision. So we're going to look at that for minus 130. And then, hey, you got a plus 525. I at least got to get something decent here. We're going my boy Sanders plus 230. My God, I trust Colonel Sanders more than I can trust this Sanders. It's always been the same shit, man. He's got the skill. He's got all the skill in the world. He just makes very, very questionable decisions, both inside the ring and outside the ring. Everyone knows he broke up with the hottest WWE superstar. No reason. Oh, man. Anyways, I know he needs a big win here. Sanders has got the skill. He's got to put it on Corrales. Corrales is very durable. That's, again, why I think this thing goes to decision. But I think that Sanders has got the striking advantage. 6-1 is by the numbers, is how much he should outstrike him. But even if he goes out there and puts 2 to 3-1 pace on him, mixes in a couple takedowns, bags some of these rounds, wins this fight. That's all I can hope on. Plus 230 was a good enough price tag that I want to take a shot there.
All right, there you have it. Our 3 best prop bets for UFC Vegas 25 going down this weekend. Me and Cody see this card pretty much the same from top to bottom. So hopefully it pays off for us, and hopefully we can cash some of these tickets. All right, Cody, back end here. Obviously, I want to give you the platform. Anything you want to say on the way out, and then I'll wrap this thing up.
Basically, all I want to say is if Ray Cooper or Roy McDonald blow this for me, he's officially dead to me. Outside of that, though, yeah, no, always appreciate all the support, everyone dropping by. You guys have been awesome since we've moved over the channel away from odds.com. Feeling the love, feeling the support. And yeah, I just want to cash you guys some tickets and keep the good times going. So always a pleasure, Locke, for providing the platform and having me on the show. And yeah, if you guys want to check out another banger of a show, check out the Friday post weigh-in show, where the guys will be able to talk about all their last little bit details, last little bit of stories that come out of the weigh-ins, and give you those final takes so you can wrap in some bets and hopefully cash some tickets on Saturday. So yeah, let's kick some ass, guys.
Like Cody said, you guys can catch me tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Eastern. I'm going to be joined by MMA Knockout Bets, Sparring with Reality, my guy Luke, and then obviously James from Lucrative MMA Betting. Tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Eastern, we're going to be doing the Ultimate Weigh-In Show with the weigh-ins in mind. Let's see if Benitez can successfully get down to 145 once again. That should definitely have an effect on how Cody starts putting his parlays together as well. So let's see how Benitez looks on the scale. Obviously, there's a couple other people that we need to worry about, but that's where you guys can find me tomorrow night. And always, you guys can find us here at 8 p.m. Eastern on Thursdays, giving you guys the props, propping you guys up for the upcoming UFC shows. Yeah, that's pretty much it. You guys can find me at MMALOTN on Twitter. You guys can follow him at CJ Saftic, this side, at CJ Saftic on Twitter. And yeah, we'll see you guys next week. Good luck on your bets. And yeah, we'll see you guys next week.